All right, hey there. This is Andrew, bringing you another Keyforge set slash house review, and this time we're going to be going back to Worlds Collide Untamed, and with me I have my good friend Julian. Hey, Julian.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, very good. How are you?
Not bad.
Awesome. Um, so before we get started talking about the house and the cards, can you walk me through how you got into Keyforge?
Sure. So I've been playing Keyforge since spring 2019, and I've been playing mostly at the Isle of Gamers store in Santa Clara, and it's been pretty good community there. So that's primarily where I've been playing. I've also gone to a few vault tours and played in a few Prime events, which has been a lot of fun. So I've gotten pretty into the game. I first heard about it at work. So there's a friend I have at work who taught me how to play Magic the Gathering.
Hmm.
And I think we got on the subject of that because I had mentioned that back in middle school, I played Yu-Gi-Oh!
Hmm.
For a year or two, which was pretty fun. Got into it by watching the show, um, and tried out the card games. Like, oh, it's a lot of fun. And I've been playing video games for a lot of my life, and I've generally enjoyed that. Enjoyed role playing games, and
Hmm.
I think card games fit well with my personality and trying to figure out certain strategies. But there's also a bit of fun because of the random element.
Yeah.
So it's not just like um, certain games where it's totally based on the skill, but there's also that kind of woe component. And you could do big plays and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. I got out of Yu-Gi-Oh because I was upset about the ban list changing all the time, and like I would buy
Ah,
these cards and then they get banned, and so it's like this is stupid. Um,
interesting.
I think it's a really fun game, and
Uh-huh.
I know that the ban list is like a tool that some games have to use to prevent it from getting broken. So
So having
maybe I prematurely walked away from that, but
hmm,
I'm sorry, what was that?
oh yeah, so having that kind of that background, that perspective, what are your thoughts on the on Keyforge's track record so far on erratas and nerfs?
Hmm. I think it's okay. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the nerfs,
Hmm.
but I know that they had good reasons for doing them. Um, Actually, I'm curious about how they decide to do a nerf or not, and it would be pretty interesting if they ever did a Crucible cast or something and like talk about that.
Hmm.
I know there've been some rules clarifications that have come out and been pretty good, like about Archimedes. I feel those erratas or biomatrix backup, like those
Yeah.
erratas make a lot of sense to me. Um, the ones that are more about balancing the game, like bait and switch,
Hmm.
I think it's more debatable.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that yeah that one. If anything, I never heard them really explain it this way, but I know it could be really punishing for newer players. I think
Hmm.
yeah, like for us, we've always kind of been very interested in finding those super optimal plays and then learning to play around them. But for a new player, that can be really harsh. And then the explanation I heard, I think it was Brad gave for nerfing library access, just had to do with the fact that if somebody pulls off like a library access dependency or whatever kind of way to get two library accesses played and gets the forge three keys in one turn, it's just not fun to watch. Which I was very sympathetic to that argument.
Hmm.
Um, Whether it was, yeah, I think maybe it wasn't like you said, maybe it wasn't necessary from a balance perspective, but the couple times I saw it on streams, it was terrible. Um, so okay, so and you undersold, by the way, like you said, you've been to a couple of vault tours and primes. Um, but correct me if I'm wrong. You've won a prime and you top forward at a vault tour. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so I just I don't want people out there to go, oh, he's been to a couple. What a noob! Like you've done really super well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, there was a moment where I was like, oh, I'm not the person in our play group with the highest achievements. It's Julian. So I just I think it's worth acknowledging. Um, cool. Okay. Anything else you want to throw out there before we jump into talking about Untamed?
Yeah, so I guess for the erratas, I haven't seen what Brad said, so it sounds like he gave some good explanations. So
Hmm.
that's pretty good, and I guess I haven't thought about it that much. So on the whole, I think the fact that there haven't been too many balance changes, I think, is a good testament to how carefully the game is designed, which I appreciate. Um, although the blasters ruling, I was upset about that one. I like that you're able to bounce blasters around, and I guess on the topic of library access, like I agree that outside of the balance settings, like there's also a fun component, and like it isn't very fun to watch or be on the receiving end of that. But I
Right.
thought blasters was a lot of fun. So if there's a way that they could reword the cards and make that work again, I think that would be excellent.
Mm, yep. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
and how I got into the game. So, yeah, I played Yu-Gi-Oh, and then we played Magic at work, and then my friend is like, "Oh, this new game from the creator of Magic came out called Keyforge," and we played a few
Mhm.
games with the starter decks, like Radiant Argus and
Mhm.
Misonics, and um, I just had a blast. And I found a local gaming group, and yep, just really got into it.
Awesome. Yeah, I like. I heard another podcast say recently they were one of the guys was saying something about something to the effect that uh, Sealed is the best example of Keyforge because you run into so many different things and at the high level, things are so samey. And I heard that and I was like, I don't, I like I love Sealed, but I completely disagree because from my perspective, it's like the fact that at a high level of play you see the variety that you do is actually one of the things that makes Keyforge stand out compared to games with a constructed deck, right? Because in those you really get a sameness, um,
Hmm.
whereas here you'll have, oh yeah, this guy is running, you know, Untamed Rush or whatever, but also he has, you know, Scout in there or something that like you wouldn't put, and then there will be these situations where that ends up being really good, but they wouldn't have put it in there if they'd had the choice.
Yeah, absolutely, and that can lead to some really interesting plays. So the unique aspect, I think, keeps the game pretty fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of variety in Sealed and Archon. I think they test different skills for sure, and Sealed certainly involves some luck with the deck you get.
Oh yeah.
So probably some more luck than Archon does.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it tests different things. And
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is that there are people who can like consistently place well in sealed events.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be some kind of skill. Personally, I think I'm better at Archon than sealed,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm I'm not sure why yet. But maybe if I
Mm-hmm.
played more sealed, I could learn more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, they definitely are um, different skill sets. Yeah, the fun thing for me always with sealed is just not knowing, whether a card is there, and I don't know, like too much to protect is the one that sticks out in my mind, right? That and interdimensional draft,
Hmm.
where it's like if you know it's in the deck, then you can play it. You know whether to play a certain way or not.
Yep.
Um, and with sealed, there's just that mystery. Who
Yeah.
knows? Am I going to forge the red key into a red baron? Who knows?
Yeah.
I
Sealed is definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, I always forge the red key anyway, for the record.
I always forge it first too, just because of like the bronze, silver, gold key
Ah,
imps. So I figured like, oh, that's must be the order. But sometimes I'm not paying attention and just forge like the key that's closest to me.
I heard. I don't know if it was somebody from the FFG staff at one point said that red makes your creatures go faster. So um, that's why I do it. But
Yeah.
That's a little mythology there. Um,
Mm.
Never works, but I try. Um, cool. Okay, so then jumping into Worlds Collide Untamed. Um, few questions I wanted to cover first of all, and so the first one is, let's say you're sitting across from an opponent. They have a Worlds Collide deck. You're playing sealed. They have a Worlds Collide deck. You see Untamed on it. What are the things that you're thinking they might be able to do out of that house?
Mm. So usually I think of the big play cards.
Hmm.
So stuff like Nature's Call. Like
Hmm.
if I pile up a bunch of uh, amber on someone, like it's just gonna get bounced. Um, Another thing I try to notice is are they not putting down too many creatures? Because it makes me think they might have a natural selection. Um,
Yeah.
and so I could walk into that at the wrong time. Whereas if they have a big board, then I think I'll feel more confident um, that they don't have something like that. Um, Key charge is always something to look out for. Um, Other than that, I think most of the cards in Untamed uh, like kind of show up on the board, and so you have some chance to react to it. Like
Hmm.
let's say Fangtooth Cavern or various creatures, and you might get hit with another card like Punctuated Equilibrium, but there's not really too much you can do about that. So
Yeah.
I think I'm mostly paying attention to the destruction cards or like the possibility for them to win um, on their turn if they have a big untamed board
Right.
in the key charge.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Q charge is always such a huge threat. Um, and then there's I think just great opportunities to mess around with the key cost, especially
Hmm.
in Worlds Collide with those imprinted Murmooks. Um, and then that recursion can be a big deal. And I
Hmm.
feel like the Amber Burst is still, still in Worlds Collide, not really close to um, what it was in Coda, but they still can put on a little gas when they, if you get the right setup.
Yeah, I think you're more likely to see it coming. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like they generally would need to have some creatures on the board
Mm-hmm.
for something to happen. Like, I mean, I've seen situations where uh, Bramble Links and Ghost Hawk comes down, but
Yep.
so even I guess the Ghost Hawk first and then the Bramble Links, but even those like there needs to be like a creature for that to even happen, and a lot of times like your stuff doesn't show up in the right order, and so those kind of things happen. But um, I think you're right. Like just hunting witch and dust pixie, like full moon, you
Mm-hmm.
could get to 4 or 5 like very easily
Mm-hmm.
um, from hand, and I think in Worlds Collide it's a lot harder to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, and then I always do the other thing I think is worth mentioning about Untamed is they do they do here and there scattered have some nice targeted damage effects. I
Hmm.
think of like Mustic Murmook specifically. I'm trying to think what else in Worlds Collide really stands out, but they do something
Unsuspecting prey,
right. Yeah.
uh,
Oh, Cauldron Boil, right?
cauldron boil.
I had somebody the other day like scoffing at Cauldron Boil, but when you see it hit at the right time, it can be really devastating.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Okay, and then okay, so next up, you're opening a sealed deck to play. It's Worlds Collide. You see Untamed on there. What other houses, or what specifically, what other like one house would you like to see next to it?
I think I'd like to see Saurian
Uh
just
huh.
because that's like likeliest to have the best cards,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much regardless of whatever you have. And I think even with respect to Untamed, like Saurian helps protect your creatures. Uh, so,
Yeah.
for example, if I'm able to ward imprinted Vermook behind Tricerian Legionary. Like that's pretty uh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I have the same answer too, especially if you get some of those really, really impactful untamed combos that want you to have some board state. Like
Hmm.
there's no better house to give you a chance at having a reasonable board state. Um,
Right. And another thing about that is I think where I've seen Untamed be really successful in Worlds Collide is like if you can drop a lot of untamed creatures
mhm,
and um, they can end up controlling the board like through skirmish
mhm,
or they're just bodies available to reap and people are prioritizing the other houses that maybe have some more um, urgent effects to deal with, and particularly the Saurian house. Like there are a lot of cards that have to be taken out and require like a lot of effort to
right.
do so, or they have a lot of exalted amber on them. So I feel it could be a pretty good distraction um, for your opponent, so that you can go into Untamed and potentially finish the game.
Right, yeah, they're too busy killing the Saurian, they leave two creatures out, and suddenly Song of the Wild is a good card. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, cool. Okay. What is your favorite in-house combo in this set for Untamed?
Hmm. So my favorite combo is actually an Age of Ascension 2. So I can do a Worlds Collide only one, but I'll talk about this one first.
Yep.
So I actually really like having the two Penpakas out,
Yeah.
um, Penpaka Anga and Penpaka Jaga. I think when you get both out and you have a few untamed creatures, like you can really just block down the board, like until they draw a clear. And in Worlds Collide, there aren't that many clears available.
Mm-hmm.
So they could run into some big problems. Like if you're,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, this happened in a game in Shadow Worlds. Like I had maybe four Untamed cards in the opening hand, and then played like a few more creatures, and I just called Untamed like 6 turns in a row, and my opponent would just play creatures, and
Mm-hmm.
I would kill them, and I wasn't even drawing any cards, but I was getting able to reap a few times, and by the time anything the board got cleared and anything could get going, like I was already up a key or something. So
Mm-hmm.
it was super helpful to have the Penpakas out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And then what's your Worlds Collide specific one?
So I like Fangtooth Cavern a lot, and
Uh-huh.
I think it goes well with like the fittest,
Mm-hmm.
just because it reduces the chance your cards will get hit, which is pretty great. Also goes well with the Penpaka Anga, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and back to the Penpakas, I heard yeah, I was on Sanctimonious, they were pointing out Helok Stonefeather, the Brobnar leader, like who I like, but they're like, you know, Pempeka Jaga like is it gives you that same effect, and it
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't have to, you don't have to worry about where you put it so much, and it's an uncommon, and like why, what in the world, why is this guy a leader? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And especially Pampaka Jaga applies off house. So
yeah,
I don't, Calyx Stonefather, I don't really get the point.
yeah.
Um, unless you draw it on the first turn, then I mean, it's bigger, so it's hard to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's the one value. I have a deck that likes it, but it's kind of like you just have to not think about it. If it comes out and it happens to be in the center, that's like great, but if not, it's a 6 power body and it's fine.
Yeah.
But whereas Jaga, you're much likelier to like be able to get value out of it.
Hmm.
Um, cool. Okay, yeah, mine I think is actually Nature's Call Mustic Marmook. Um,
Mm.
I picked up a deck recently where I'm able to um, Nature's Call a couple of Mustic Mermooks, and actually Bramblelinks too, actually. But the Mermooks are the more fun thing for me because it's just like, pew pew. I'm shooting things, um,
Hmm.
and it feels really nice. Of course, imagining those being Dust Pixies instead makes me a little sad. Because would I rather deal 4 damage to something or have 2 amber? I I don't think that's a very difficult choice, but it's still fun.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of saying that combo too. I really like that one, especially with wards,
Hmm.
because you can um, use Nature's Call or the Mustic Vermouth effect to deal the ward or destroy or bounce,
Yeah.
whatever order you want to do. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Um, and Mustic Vermouths, I like all the Vermouths, and I really like Mustic Vermouth because I think it actually helps with the Untamed game plan of like having a lot of creatures on the board,
Hmm.
because when they're out, the game slows down,
Yeah.
but on your terms. And so
Hmm.
you use it to mess with their board, and then you can get rid of your own if you want, or just forge for bigger numbers. Because if you're generating more amber than they are every turn, then a higher key cost benefits you.
Great. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And then uh, if you could pick a Maverick to get into Untamed, what would it be?
I think Obsidian Forge,
Hmm.
and the reason for that is because you can get that burst with the board, and potentially you could do some really interesting things. Actually, I just thought of if you had the Mustic Vermooks out, you could Obsidian Forge them away and then forge for lower cost.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it would be a pretty cool one,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
especially with I mean the imprinted Vermook too. Now that I think of it,
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, hopefully you would be able to leave it somehow. I
Hmm.
guess if you leave it or destroy it, it would be the same. So actually, maybe that one doesn't do too much.
No, I think it's yeah, I think it's good. I think uh saw somebody do it, yeah, where they killed their own, and so essentially it ends up being like a 2 amber swing, right? Because it's reducing the cost by 1, but you're also losing the cost bump, so it ends up being extra good. Yeah, I think uh yeah, I was trying to think. I don't think there's any like amazing combo necessarily that I would go for. But
Hmm.
I think being able to drop a taunt creature on the Untamed turn would just be so nice. Um,
Mm.
and so having like a Brutodon or something like that just to throw down with Taliga maybe I would just be really a good feeling. Because that's so much the problem with some of these uh, really nice Untamed creatures is I just feel like they just die too too easily.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
And I
okay.
guess
Hmm.
in the other, sorry, one last thing. I guess
Hmm.
in the other direction, if you have a lot of crummy untamed creatures in your deck, if you had a Maverick Buzzle, you could just like purge all of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes that'd be the best
So,
way to go, right? And that could actually work really nicely with the Harmonia too, like purge enough stuff. I guess
hmm
you're blowing up the opponent's board too. Maybe it doesn't work out that well, but hmm,
hmm
potential. Um, okay, and then what about Legacy? What Legacy card would you like to see in Slide?
I think definitely Nepenthe Seed.
Hmm.
It's just such an amazing card. It's useful in all kinds of circumstances. So just the fact that it's in Untamed, um, I think I would bring it up in this case. I don't think it has anything in particular to do with Worlds Collide Untamed that wouldn't apply to any other house. I just think it's such a amazing card.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of torn between either like which of the eye is really similar to Nepenthe Seed but less
Hmm.
durable, or the other one I was thinking of is like a Dusk Witch. Would be pretty fun. Um,
Yeah, I think both of those would be awesome.
Trying to imagine having a like having Saurian with a Dusk Witch.
Oh
Pretty
yeah, that would
cool.
be brutal.
Yep.
Or if you could get
Mhm.
out like if you had a Compsos Haruspex out, then you could just do some crazy stuff with
Mhm.
Star Alliance and Duskwitch.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you don't need Compsos for that. But if you Compsos for maybe creatures with only play effects, and then Star
Right.
Alliance alone with Duskwitch would be out of control.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that'd be plus. Oh gosh, add a transporter platform in there, and
Oh wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um. Here goes the Dexa Keyforge search.
that'd be great. Yeah.
um. Cool. And then do you have a particular like anomaly that you think fits well with Untamed?
Hmm. Well, I
I'll,
think
mhm.
Infomancer or Memolith.
Mm.
If you could get that with a mimicry,
Oof,
that would be yeah, that would be top.
that sounds really good.
Yeah.
um, yeah, the okay, the one I was gonna say is Ghost Form, but that's really because I I got that recently. It's really fun,
Mhm.
but it's a really great card to throw on like an imprinted Murmook or something like that, just to or even like Taliga with Ghost Form, right? You don't need to ever reap or fight with the Taliga once she's on the board. If you can just keep her safe, you're very happy.
Yeah, Ghost Form on passive effects, um, on creatures with passive effects is so good. And
Hmm.
I remember when Worlds Collide first came out, there was a deck for sale which had two Taligas and a Ghost Form.
Ooh,
Um, and it's like, I should have pounced on that.
I'm sure somebody did.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. This is a 3 power beast with skirmish, and if you have used a creature to reap this turn, then Bramble Link's Heirs Play Ready. Be pretty good.
Yeah. I like this card. I think it works well in multiples too.
Yeah.
It's can be a way to clear out some problems on the
Hmm.
other side of the board, or just get you some extra amber. I like that it's good at fighting and good at amber generation, so I'm a big fan.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's very versatile.
Hmm.
Okay, next up is Cauldron Boil. This is an action with a bonus amber that says play, deal damage to each creature equal to the amount damage on that creature. And like I said, I think this card gets like overlooked sometimes, but if you, especially if you get it with like an unsuspecting prey or something like that, it can be super good.
Yeah, I think this card can lead to some big plays. Uh, I've personally found it really inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like either I don't want to play it. These are some examples of when it could go wrong. I don't want to play it because my creatures are damaged, or it um, there is no damage on the board, so it just doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or I drew it before the unsuspecting prey, and so there are a lot of situations where it doesn't work out. I think if you plan carefully, though, like particularly if your deck has some archiving, like you could bust this
Yeah.
out for a really big turn. Um, I I found Save the Pack probably more useful than this, and I didn't think Save the Pack was too great either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think there are some certain circumstances where you could pull off a really big play with this card.
Yeah, and you're right. Save the Pack feels less bad to discard because there's no pip on it.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, the pip is you get some I don't know what you would call it, but like
it's
not
loss. It's
really
loss
FOMO,
aversion.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
Cool.
oh, I had 5 amber on last key and last turn. Like, what if I play Cauldron?
What if I murdered half my creatures? Cool.
Okay, so I'll read the next card. Deepwood Druid, 3 power Elf Witch, deploy and play Reap, fully heal a neighboring creature. Hmm,
I think this is
not
the one
great.
exception to purge the witch.
Yeah, it's disappointing they put the witch trait on this. It's a bringing shame. I think that I don't really get it. Um, I guess if you have a big creature next to it, preferably an untamed.
Yeah.
You could keep using it to fight and heal, and it's kind of like a makeshift skirmish.
Hmm.
Um, I've also dropped this next to uh, I don't know, a big creature that had a lot of amber on it or something, and it healed.
Yeah.
But this was like even more situational than Cauldron Boil.
Yeah.
I just wish this card did more. Like,
Even if it
okay,
was
maybe
both.
ward on play or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah. Even if it like healed both its neighbors or something, it's such a
Mhm.
lame effect. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, the effect is just super weak. I think healing, maybe if they associate it with amber, it's like if you heal this creature, you gain 1 amber or 2 amber, something.
Hmm.
Uh, or you could even, uh, if you fully heal a creature, you can bring your creature back. There's so many areas you could go with this. I think healing by itself is just not very interesting, especially on a
Yeah.
creature. Like if it was an
Yeah.
action, it gave you a pip, it's like whatever. But
Well, compare this to Ingram, who does it on play fight reap, doesn't fully heal, but 3 is usually fully, adds a ward,
Mhm.
and like doesn't care where it is on the board. Like, yeah, it's kind of yeah.
Yeah, this was like Ingram, but it was only a neighbor in deploy. I think that's actually pretty reasonable.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with this card. Um,
Yep.
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yep.
Okay, next one, Ghost Hawk. Okay, this is not an unfortunate card. I really like this card.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a dead draw, um,
Hmm.
and I suppose if your opponent has a lot of Ghost Hawks, then maybe you're paying more attention to their board because
Yeah.
if you can get rid of their creatures, then this Ghost Hawk's pretty weak.
Hmm.
But you can do a lot of stuff with this. It actually doesn't work too well if you just drew a big untamed hand.
Hmm.
Let's say you're trying to get the creatures on the board, and hopefully you had some creatures that you could reap with, but you might not. And so this isn't a card you want to see that early in the game.
Hmm.
However, I think the effect is very strong, uh, especially given all the strong, great reap effects there are, and the ways that you can get some untamed cards back into your deck.
Hmm.
Um, with load on or regrowth, I think increase the value of this card. So I think it's a pretty good design. I'm a fan.
Yeah, and this can even be, if you have a really big board, this can be good value with Nature's Call.
Oh yeah,
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 you
that's a
have to
great
have a big
combo.
board for that to work, but if you do, it's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And also, this can get rid of some problematic stuns. So if
Hmm.
you want to go into another house but they're stunned, like this can remove those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the current ruling is that this can reap even through Enrage, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I heard because enrage is like you have to fight if able, but it's only Ghost Hawk only gives the creature ability to reap.
Right.
Yeah, but it cannot make Toad reap,
Right.
unfortunately.
Nothing can make Toad reap, except for Shadow of Dees.
Hmm. One thing about Ghost Hawk though that I've bumped into a lot that is I have Fangtooth Cavern out,
Yeah.
and I would prefer to destroy one of my opponent's creatures. So that gets in the way sometimes. So I think my better Untamed decks do
Hmm.
have Fangtooth Cavern,
Hmm.
but you win some, you lose some.
Yep. Yep. Okay, cool. Next up is Harmonia, which is a 2-power human witch. I think this is a pretty good witch with elusive, and after you play a creature, if there are more enemy creatures than friendly creatures, gain an amber. Um, I think people are well, when the set first came out, people were so used to Hunting Witch that they assumed you wouldn't get an amber from the Harmonia itself. But
Hmm.
there's no stipulation on this one like there is on Hunting Witch. So yeah, I've seen this be pretty good value a number of times.
Yeah, I think this card can be pretty good um, as long as the rest of your lineup supports it. Like if
Hmm.
you have a Untamed lineup with a lot of creatures in it, this won't be doing very much. But if you've got a lineup heavy with actions, uh, like Nature's Call, could actually lead to some interesting combos with this. Um, there was another one I was thinking of that is escaping me, but yeah, I think this card is it's pretty strong. It doesn't fire as much as I would like.
Hmm.
I suppose if you were to try a strategy where, let's say, you let them have a really big board and then you um, drop Harmonia, play some creatures, and then do Unnatural Selection.
Hmm.
That's the card I was thinking of, actually. Then that could be pretty interesting because you gained a lot of amber and then destroyed um, the board, which allowed you to gain the amber from Harmonia. However, that involves a lot of cards to happen.
Right.
Um, so I
Yeah.
think it's cool when it happens, but like that cannot be the linchpin of your strategy.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and that I think is maybe one of the major differences between Worlds Collide versus Coda Untamed is a lot of the Coda stuff is just good, period, and the Untamed stuff is like good if you get the right things in the right order at the right time, etc.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
hmm,
yeah.
okay.
So I think it's an okay card.
Hmm.
It doesn't fit well with, I guess, the way I like to play Worlds Collide Untamed, which is having a lot of creatures out.
Right.
But sometimes it can come in handy.
Right. Yeah, yeah. If you like playing board control, then it's not going to work out for you. But it's good to look
No,
out for in your opponent's decks. Um,
that is true.
okay. Imprinted Murmuk is a 3 power beast with elusive, and it makes your keys cost -1, which is always good.
Yeah, I really like this card. I would love to have a competitive deck that has like 3 of these. Um,
I had a competitive deck that had 3 of these, but I sold it. So sorry,
well,
it's
if
gone.
you can sell it to me, if you get another one.
Yeah, I will. I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, like this card is really good. It's
Hmm.
difficult to get rid of. The power is not that low.
Hmm.
Um, it has an issue with Perilous Wild, but that doesn't come up that often,
Yep.
um, being elusive. But yeah, your keys cost -1, and they just have to do something about it. And particularly with Saurians, if you can protect this,
Yeah.
it can be a big advantage.
Hmm. I think the number one way it is such an advantage is there are so many like combos in the game, especially on the shadow side, that like are there to get you to 5, to get your opponent to
Hmm.
5 rather. Um, and so if you can change the game state such that nope, I can be at 5 and it's fine. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Like this messes up too much protect and like doors up to heaven.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's similar to the Titan mechanic in that respect. I
Hmm.
think this, but this can be anywhere on the board too.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's easier to get rid of than Titan mechanic. In some ways, harder.
Yeah.
Probably on the whole, I'd say Titan mechanic's more difficult to get rid of, but
It's
this
more
is
durable,
definitely a challenge.
and this isn't symmetrical, right? So it has that benefit.
Yes. Although you can, it's pretty easy to turn off the Titan mechanic.
Yeah. Yep.
Then it's off for you too. So well
Yeah.
designed card,
Yeah.
both in pretty Murmuk and Titan mechanic.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay.
All right. So next we have Key Charge. So it's a reprint from the last 2 sets. Action, lose 1 amber. If you do, you may forge a key at current cost. Pretty great card. I think more difficult to use in this set than it was in Call of the Archons. As far as Age of Ascension goes, well, I think the Untamed the Worlds Collide was better than the one in Age of Ascension. So probably this key charge is easier to fire. Um, with Com Officer Kirby, this
Hmm.
card's pretty interesting, or Val
Hmm.
Jericho.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. I think the key charge is a very powerful card. Sometimes your lineup doesn't support it, um, but I guess it's mostly comes down to like if your untamed lineup isn't that good, then this card is pretty dead.
Right.
But if you have a good untamed lineup, you won't be sad to see this.
Yeah. Yep. And I agree. Like with the Curvier Val, it can be super good, and it's also like this is one of those cards that's really good with like the imprinted Murmooks, right? If you have one or two of those
Hmm.
out, suddenly really good deal.
Yep. Yeah, that is a great synergy.
Okay.
And then next up we have Molfin, 3 power beast, has hazardous 3, and the passive effect after amber stolen from you, deal 1 to each enemy creature for each amber stolen. Hmm. When I had this card out, like people just steal anyway,
Yeah.
and it's like I did some damage. Maybe I blew up Urchin or
Brand.
Ronnie Wrist Clocks, Bren. Like yeah, blowing up Bren is actually terrible. Um, yeah, uh, I think if they merged this with Fang House from the previous set and it had Assault as well, then it would fit more into the kind of that Bramble Links space where
Mm-hmm.
this card kind of does multiple things,
Yeah.
and you can figure out how to use it just in case one of the effects doesn't fire. Like there are a lot of decks that have no stealing at all, and so this is a blank hazardous 3.
Yeah.
It's like Briar Grubbling in
Mm-hmm.
that case, which I think it's like hazardous 5.
Mm-hmm.
So that's yeah, Molfin. mm, I think it could be tweaked to be better. I thought the idea is really interesting,
Yeah.
to punish stealing. I think the Cephaloist in Mass Mutation, where
Mm-hmm.
it's just
You can't.
turn stealing off,
Yeah.
yeah, if you have 4 or more amber, um, was I think more of what I would want to see from steal protection, particularly in Untamed. Usually dealing damage isn't that helpful for the Untamed house.
Yeah. This is extra bad against like Rad Penny, right? Where uh
Yeah.
deal and oh it goes back in your deck. That's pretty frustrating. Yeah, I agree. Like this looked super cool. I had high hopes for it, but it just doesn't seem to be what you want to do. I think like yeah, this is jumping ahead sets again. Like Book of Malefaction, even I think is a much more interesting steel punish.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, maybe if this just did more damage, like we would notice it. But,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's sometimes this cleared my board because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't paying attention, and then I got
Mm-hmm.
hit with it pretty bad. But that's just like a egregious error. Like that's not really a reason this card is good.
Right. Okay, cool. So next up is Mustic Murmook. This is a 4 power beast, and it makes each player's keys cost +1. And when you play it, you deal 4 to a creature. Um, and I like, yeah, I am always happy to see this in my deck because it means, like you said earlier, right? I'm able to control, keeping my opponent off for a little while. Um, Usually it works out in my favor, and then just being able to mash that 4 damage when it comes out, and even being able to use it as a body to hit stuff later is really nice.
Yeah, totally. I'm never sad to see this card. Means you have to stop it untamed. You can, I mean, 4 damage. It out of hand is pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mighty Tiger did that, but it didn't even have the other effect. And I
Yes.
think Mighty Tiger is considered to be a pretty good card. So
Yeah.
I love seeing Mustic Mermooks, especially with Nature's Call, Code Monkey,
Mm-hmm.
Hysteria, any of the ways to replay it over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty great. Works well with regrowth, load on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best commons in the set.
Yeah. Yeah. It's solid. I think the funniest thing about comparing it to Mighty Tiger is I think it's a strictly better version. Mustic Murmook is,
Hmm.
and it's common instead of rare. So just
Yeah.
like okay, that worked out kind of funny.
Yeah, I think Mighty Tiger's a beast, right? Yes, it's just Mighty Tiger with a different picture and a buff.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then next up is Regrowth, which is an oldie but goodie. This is an action with a bonus amber. When you play it, you return a creature from your discard pile to your hand, and you're almost always gonna find some nice untamed creature to do that. Good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think the play effects are more lacking
Mm-hmm.
in this set. Like I'm thinking, okay, I want to return Dust Pixie, or even in the older set, like returning Amber Spine Mongrel or uh, Dew Fairy or stuff like that. Those cards tended to be more of must removes. Um, Here, I guess I could regrowth Ghost Hawk and the Murmooks and some of the rest I regrowth and it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just go regrowth it to the house I'm planning to call next.
Hmm. Boy, that's that's not a good sign. Worlds Collide Untamed.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right.
Okay. So next up we have Rusnar. Um, 4 power beast insect. Fight, destroy an artifact. Note you have to do that. And then if that artifact has an amber bonus, you gain that much amber. So I first of all, I like that it is artifact control. So it's finicky to get off, but at least it can do it. Like your deck has the capability to take an artifact out. Because I have some decks that are really good, but they don't have artifact control. And so when someone drops a good artifact, like it can be pretty frustrating. But if you have a Rustnar on the deck, like you can look for it and try and do something about it. Um, I have been in situations before where I wanted to fight with the Rustnar and I have to blow up one of my own artifacts, which is pretty annoying. Um, one one combo in AOA, which was cool, was you could destroy the Sting with this. But I don't think the Sting was in this set. So, and also the artifact control in Worlds Collide is like pretty superior compared to the previous sets because you have well, Hawk is probably the biggest thing, but there's a common artifact removal from hand. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think this card is pretty mediocre, but it does
Yeah.
serve a purpose in Untamed that I think, other than grasping vines, I don't know how you can deal with artifact, and this one gets rid of it permanently. So I I think I'm fine seeing one in my deck.
Yeah. Yeah. I always feel happy to. Even a couple just means it's a little more consistent. It's funny though. I like where I found this to work is actually when you get it in like a Brobnar deck with Ganger Chieftain, so you can immediately fire it off that way.
Oh,
Um,
that's nice.
and yeah, it is nice, but then it's Worlds Collide Brobnar, and you have
Yeah.
other problems to deal with at that point. But it can be pretty good. I'm actually really excited to see how this does against like. I mean, these are the weird edge cases, but in mass mutation, you're going to have somebody at some point. Somebody's going to drop an artifact with like 3 bonus amber on it, and then somebody's going to Rustnar it, and it's going to be pretty cool. So whenever that happens, I want to hear about it.
Oh yeah, that's right. You gain as much amber as it has
Yeah.
on it. So you don't gain for the other icons, but the
Right.
amber icon, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, in mass mutation, you have reclaim by nature, which is much better artifact.
Oh, and that just gives you for the bonus icons a bonus amber.
That gives you all of them, and it just straight purges it. Yeah. Pretty solid.
Yeah, I hmm. Yep, that does seem like the Rustnar idea, but much better
Yeah.
version typically. With skirmish, this could
Yeah.
be pretty good. I put an instrument of silence on the Rustnar before and uh, tried to clean up. Mhm. Okay. And then we've got Song of the Wild action. play for the remainder of the turn. Each friendly creature gains Reap, gain one. Um, so it's a pretty good card. The problem is it when you draw it in the wrong order, it feels terrible,
Yeah.
and that happens a lot. Um, like creatures in Worlds Collide live a bit longer than in Coda, just because there were fewer board clears. Age of
Mhm.
Ascension also had, Coward's End and Unlock Gateway and that stuff. This set, I, I don't know if there's any card that just totally deletes the board except like Key to Dis. I
Yeah,
could
I
be
mean,
forgetting some.
there's Harbinger of Doom, like that's
Uh, yeah, that's true.
but that I mean,
Yeah, that one it's pretty slow.
yeah.
Yeah, that does clear the board. That's true. Yeah, Reap gain one. Well, a lot of these creatures that we weren't too excited about, like Deepwood Druid, I mean, benefit from this, and so they're not necessarily high priority targets for your opponent. And then you can do Song of the Wild.
Right.
Uh, so I think if you have a key charge
Hmm.
and this, that's pretty powerful. But that's also dependent on luck. I think
Right.
without archives, this card is going to leave you heartbroken a lot.
Yeah, yeah, definitely much better with archives. Much better if you can get it, to fire with Ghost Talk, and then,
Hmm.
um, and then of course, yeah, much better in Mass Mutation if you get it with a Dark Harbinger. Um, so,
Oh, that's like a Cincinnati style combo. I've never thought of that combo before.
I have a saved search for it on Death of Keyforge. I'm pretty excited about it, but um, yeah, it's
That's
it's
pretty good.
it's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Especially if you have like other actions. But again, like that's yeah, I think Song of the Wild in Worlds Collide is just a dud so much of the time. It's really really rough.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But when it works, it's a really big play. I think even
Hmm.
bigger than Harmonia, like Ghost Talk
Hmm.
or Song of the Wild, Ghost Talk, Game Four,
Hmm.
uh, E charge, like that's great. But when it's not supported by archives, though, um, you'll be playing this card a lot for no effect, or gain one.
Right. Yep. Okay. So next up is Tantadlin. This is a 9 power tree. It only deals 2 damage when fighting. After it fights, you discard a random card from your opponent's archives. And it's back from AOA, and it's pretty meh. About all I can say for it, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, interacting with opponent's archives, not many cards can do that. I just think it's not enough. Maybe if this had Rosnar's effect, that would be pretty nice, uh,
Hmm.
because you can actually survive multiple hits. Um, but if your deck doesn't have archives, I'd say like most decks don't.
Yeah.
Um, then it's a 9 power creature that deals 2 damage when fighting. I mean, I think even like Galea tops and all that those kind of Saurian cards that have big powers and they deal more damage than this. So, hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this card could use a buff. And one thing that's nice about it in Worlds Collide, though, is it works well with Fangtooth Cavern
Hmm.
because if you have multiple Tentadlins, you're clearing their board and reaping, perhaps.
Yeah. They're surviving.
Yeah. And there
That's
have
true.
been times like I discarded the card that they needed from their archives, but
Yeah.
it's quite situational. I think at a common, you just see this way more than you want to.
Right. Yep. Okay, and then next up is the fittest, which you mentioned earlier. This is great. It's an action with a bonus amber that gives each friendly creature a +1 power counter. Like, this is what Bumblebird always should have been, I think.
Yep.
and it's just great.
Yeah, great card. I think is a common. Happy to see this. It affects all your creatures, not just Untamed.
Hmm.
Um, it takes many of those small creatures with good passive effects out of the danger zone
Hmm.
um, of like 2 power or less. I guess those are more in Call of the Archons, I suppose, than in this set. But a 4 power Imperitor Mook is definitely more challenging
Yeah.
to deal with. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, with Fangtooth Cavern, maybe Penpakahanga, uh, and Jaga, like you could have a really good sweeper set um,
Yeah.
with Untamed.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so next up we have Unnatural Selection, action with an Amber Pit play, choose 3 friendly creatures and 3 enemy creatures, destroy each other creature. I really like this card. I think it's super great. Um,
Hmm.
it can stop those runaway boards. You leave their 3 worst creatures, pick different houses, and you have your 3 best. Works well if you have some stuff warded, because then you could have more than 3. Just really good card, and I think necessary. With some of the other cards we've been seeing, like if they didn't have this in Untamed either, like I'm not sure how playable it would be. Like uh, having that board clear,
Hmm.
which is more difficult to find in Worlds Collide, and it's not a total clear, but um, this really boosts the power of Untamed,
Hmm.
and I think the flavor is great. The picture is funny.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's just also sad, I guess.
They're
Yeah,
not real
the
creatures.
name, yeah, yeah, it's like a Roadrunner
Yeah.
or Wile E. Coyote running into a wall.
Yep.
Um, yeah, the name is cool too. So I'm
Hmm.
a big fan of this card. I
Hmm.
love seeing it in multiples.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I think like one of the maybe slightly underappreciated benefits of the card is because you're choosing both sides, right? You get to leave your opponent with their worst 3 creatures and you with your best 3. So even if you have the same size board and you're each losing the same number of creatures, you're still going to come out ahead because
Hmm.
you have that power of choice. Which
Yeah, totally. And also, if you have a big board and you need to discard this, I mean, you're not really that sad because it's
right,
like, well, you're winning. So,
right,
whereas the other cards, it's like you
yes,
discarded it and you're losing. That's not very fun.
yes, yes. That's the income tax
Yeah.
problem. If you have something to complain about, then you don't have any.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay, cool. Next up.
Okay. Unsuspecting prey action. Deal 2 damage up to 3 undamaged creatures. So this works well with Cauldron Boil.
Hmm.
Can get rid of some small creatures. Uh, this actually I've found more useful playing against Call of the Archons.
Hmm.
It's like you delete Ember Imp and Restring Guntus,
Yes.
uh, Hunting Witch. Yeah, so that's great. In Worlds Collide, trying to think of what are the 2 power creatures that I need to get rid of. I mean, it's not immediately coming to mind.
It's.
Like
I think it's
Eddie
hard.
is 3.
Yeah, I think it's hard because the like, um, you you one could argue that Sarian is the best house in the game. I think it's probably a toss up between Sarian and Logos,
Hmm.
and Sarian does not have a single power 2 creature, and
Mm,
Logos, actually, oddly, because Logos, they're not super big, but you daughter there, right? You kill
yep.
daughters with, but
Hmm.
there's not really any other super value that with it. Oh, babbling bibliophile, right?
Mm,
But nobody expects those to live anyway. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so I think because of that, it's a little less valuable. But against Coda and even against AOA, right? Like this. boom, you killed. Um, I can't believe Rise got another triple Grey Rider deck, right? This kills all three of them. Really
Oh
nice.
yeah, yeah. Gray Rider, Gray Rider in triplicate is busted.
Yeah, but this fixes it, sort
I think if this is your solution to the Gray Rider, it's like you may have some bigger
of.
problems.
Maybe
But
so.
I mean, this is a pretty underwhelming card. I think if it had a pip, I would probably stop complaining about it. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah, dealing damage and healing is just by itself not super good. This could fit. I don't know if this was reprinted in mass mutation, but with damage pips, I mean, this is better.
It's not because as soon as you hit them with the damage pip, they become ineligible for the two because the pips come first.
No, I meant like just having damage pips of the deck means like you could take out some people
Oh,
after you soft them up with this.
right. Oh yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah,
I
it would
mean,
stop
it's
them
it's a
running
stretch.
units. Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. So next up is cam. Oh, we're into the uncommon territory now.
Hmm.
Camouflage is an upgrade with a bonus amber. I think this is back from AOA, right? Um,
Yep.
and it says that creatures not on a flank cannot fight this creature. Um, I it's okay, but I can't think of a situation where I felt like this really impacted the game, other than just giving me an amber.
Yeah, pretty much. It can boost Light of the Archons. It can make some creature
Yeah.
even harder to get rid of. I think I have a deck with like Encounter Suit and Calipigian Ideal and Camouflage
Hmm.
on a like Perfectus Ludo or something, and
Mm,
City Gates, and so it was getting out of control. But the Camouflage is definitely the least important card of the ones I named. So
right.
it's yeah, it's pretty mediocre. It gives you a pip though,
Yeah.
and it does interact with upgrades. Like if well, I guess Army Officer now. This is interesting for that, but you wouldn't have that card. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
I think it's better than a creature that has an effect that's harder to fire, just because it gives you an amber, and it
Hmm.
does give you some protection.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Okay, next up is the Fangtooth Cavern, which is an artifact with a bonus amber. And it says at the end of your turn, destroy the least powerful creature. And yeah, this one's super fun. I think partially because it changes the parameters of the game so much,
Yep.
um, that it really, um, both players start having to play around it. Okay, do I discard this so that my opponent's creature will die, or what's the right approach here? And I think that type of effect is actually really good for the game.
Yeah, I love those kind of artifacts like Soul Snatcher,
Hmm.
Beat Sigil, Gambling Den that have effects that really warp the game state and change the game up a lot. Uh, Keeps it fresh, makes things interesting. You can't just play on the autopilot anymore. Like
Right.
you have to consider the card. Fangtooth and multiples is very interesting. I actually don't think I have any decks that have that, but
Uh-huh.
it seems pretty fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of times you discard creatures. The power of your creatures matters a lot. I find this doesn't work that well if you have shadows in your deck,
Hmm.
because the creatures are so tiny. But if you have other big houses, pretty pretty powerful. And if you can get this out early, you could destroy like 5 or 6 creatures. That's over the course of a game. That's actually
Hmm.
quite impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, I have this in a deck that it can archive a ton with Philophosaurus, and then the one of the nice things to do is drop an eye on the table and then discard, 5 or 6 discards that you had in archives, and steal a bunch. Um, the bummer is always that, okay, I get to fire that off, and then the eye's dead, so it's not it's a one turn thing, but because it's Saurian, like outside of that, it kills a lot of opponent stuff, so it's usually worth it.
Hmm. Yeah, and steal 6 and go away. I mean, that's quite good.
Yeah, there are, and yeah, there are worse situations for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But you do have the opportunity cost there, right? Like you blew up your own creature and not one of
Hmm.
theirs. So it is a little painful.
Hmm.
Okay. So next up, we have Flaxia, should reprint.
Hmm.
The Fairy. 4 power. Play gain 2 if you control more creatures than your opponent. So I think this fits more in the way I like to play Untamed, but just putting a lot of creatures down,
Yeah.
than Harmonia does. And actually, this card and Harmonia are at odds, so hopefully
Hmm.
you don't get them in the same deck.
Right.
Uh, with Recurrence, like you could put Flaxia down, Nature's Call, put it down again, get it back with Regrowth, get it back with Lodon. I think this is classic Untamed. It's perfect at uncommon, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, this seems to be like a more balanced version of Dust Pixie.
Yes,
Yeah, and
definitely,
you can't Infernus
definitely
this
agree with that.
either, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. No, that feels really good. When you get this off, and then your opponent's like, okay, I guess I don't want you to do that again, so I'll delete it. But yeah, but they don't hurt you at all. Really handy.
Hmm. Yeah, and 4 power. I mean, you could use this to take nuisance off the table and
Yep.
regrowth into it, or use as low dawn fodder. Like,
Yep.
yeah, it's a great card.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
Okay, then we have Fogbank action with an Amber Pip. Your opponent cannot use creatures to fight on their next turn. I think this is a pretty powerful effect,
Hmm.
uh, especially if you've got a good board state going on, which in Worlds Collide more important than
Hmm.
in other sets. So having fighting turned off could be a potentially a huge problem if you're able to fire your Falaphosaurus or CXO Tabor or anything that needed to stay alive for a turn, and maybe the only way they were able to get rid of it was by fighting, or
Hmm.
you could set up your taunts, and this is a pretty disruptive card in this set. So I'm usually happy to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I think um, the only situation where I've seen that backfire was it involved more than one Ganger Chieftain and strong reap effects. But
Mm,
but 9 times out of 10, this is really good, and this does help you, like you were saying, build up. Okay, like I'm gonna drop Taliga, I'm gonna drop, you know, um, a couple of other good untamed creatures. I'm gonna say you can't fight, so you're just gonna have to leave those creatures on the board, and then next turn I'm gonna do a Song of the Wild or something like that, right? Like it
yep.
um, can be really nice if you fire that off like.
Yeah, in that case, you might even hold the Song of a Wild uh, just to get that effect.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
but if you don't see Fog Bank, you should just discard it.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, also that is a good point though that you made. Like, um, if they have Ganger Chieftain, Drummernaut, or Grey Riders, like you're probably better off just tossing this card,
Hmm.
because they could reach to 6,
Yeah.
which is pretty bad. Or, well, if they're already on the board.
Yep. Um, okay. Cool. Next up is Gebuk. This is a 5 power beast with destroyed. Discard the top card of your deck. If it is a creature, after Gebuk leaves play, put that creature into play in Gebuk's position in the battle line. Um, Possibly one of the more tortured um, rules sets in the game, but
Oh,
but I think this is actually pretty. I think this card is fine. It's a little bit of a bummer if you hit something that has a play effect that's good, but still, like I I generally think this is fine, and actually having a 5 power body in Untamed that like doesn't appear super threatening can be a really nice effect. So I really like it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think 5 power is good, and it does do something. I'm just concerned about discarding a card that you might actually want.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like this better if it actually discarded more cards, like keep discarding until you get a creature or something, because then you're going through your deck faster. But if you burn one card, it might be a card that you wanted.
Yeah,
The creature that it gets put into play, you wanted the play effect and you didn't get it. If
yeah,
it's an untamed creature, it comes in exhausted. You can't even use it. Uh, so uh, to me, I mostly just see 5 with a blank text.
right. Yeah, I think that's a fair way. That's a fair way to think about it. And yeah, I agree. If it were discard until you find a creature, put that creature into play, um, that would be much better. Um, and honestly, I think if it said put it into play ready, that
Hmm.
wouldn't make it too good. I think it would be
Yeah, for
fine.
sure.
I think it would be
Hmm.
fine. And in fact, what that would do is that would make your opponent want to kill it on their turn. So yeah, it could be better, but I still think having a 5 power body is like, pretty fine.
Yeah, and with a Pampaka, like
Yeah.
it can be difficult to get rid of. And okay, you throw it into someone, and it died, and maybe you're getting another creature on the board.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Cool. Next up is Grasping Vines, and this is an action with a bonus amber. Been around since Coda. That
Mhm.
returns up to 3 artifacts to their owner's hands. Um, yeah, I think this one is actually pretty nice. Partially just because of the versatility, and if you if you happen to have the untamed artifacts in this set are not super wonderful, except for maybe Fangtooth Cavern, but if you happen to have like one of those and you can like push 2 of an opponent's artifacts into their hand and then also get an extra amber out of pushing the Fangtooth Cavern back to yours and playing it again, like it's
Yep.
pretty fine.
Yeah, that's a great combo. Uh, I think this card's outstanding, especially if they have multiple artifacts at different houses with no amber. This could be a big setback
Yes.
by clogging up your hand. Um, I wish this card was a common, actually. Like, just make
Mm-hmm.
artifacts a little more balanced.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great card.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
Excuse me.
agree. Bless you. Cool. Okay. Moving on.
Okay. Instrument of Silence upgrade. This creature gains skirmish and fight gain 1. So I'm slightly impressed by this card. Uh, I think skirmish is a very strong
Mm-hmm.
ability,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're able to gain 1 and take creatures off the board, and you don't take any damage in return, is pretty great. I think putting this on, it can go well pretty much on uh, any creature with a fight effect that's interesting. Um, it doesn't feel too bad to just put it on any creature really, because
Yeah.
it could always fight. Um, and being able to repeat an effect like Dendrix or Brusnar
Mm-hmm.
or Legatus Raptor,
God
like
forbid
over and
snag.
over. Snag, yeah. I think I have a deck with this and Snag and
Ugh.
Pampaka Jaga. They might be 2 different decks. Yeah,
Ugh.
you could just lock them out of the game with that. If they keep playing creatures,
Right.
Snag into elusive is the worst because you can control that.
Yes.
But presumably with this, the creatures are dying. But yeah, you can cause some big problems So I think it's pretty good.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I agree.
Next up, we've got King
Hmm.
of Fant, 5 power beast. Each creature gains reap, destroy this creature. So it's just worded slightly differently than the Blood Shard Imp,
Hmm.
right? It says after a creature reaps, destroy it. I don't I don't think I know the rules well enough to understand the implications of that. I just thought it was interesting that
Hmm.
this one is like a keyword reap. Is there a difference?
That's a good question. I don't think that there is. The timing point is the same because it's after it reaps. But um, the only thing I can think of is if if I see. I don't think that this counts as being part of your the creature's text box. So I'm just trying to think of it like interacts differently with Shadow of Dees, but I don't even think it does.
Mm,
I think if this is on your side of the board and you play Shadow of Dees, then your opponent's creatures are going to die whether you played Bloodshard Imp or King of. I think it's more like I think this is actually more about them fixing their templating than about
mm,
fixing the actual like game flow.
gotcha. Yeah, it's good to clean that up. So
Hmm.
if that was what this was about, then kudos. I guess with the shadow of this, if you had the blood shard imp and you played it on them, their creatures would still blow up. Whereas if well, actually, yeah, it's the same, right? Because if
I
I came
think so, but I wouldn't. I'm not 100% sure.
due to it being 5 power, you really have control over. You have more control over how long the effect lasts. So if you drop this in a way, it is a creature control because either they have to waste time getting rid of it, potentially fighting it, which could most likely result in them losing at least one creature,
Hmm.
um, or they can ignore the effect and then they're not reaping, so you're getting some good amber control, or their creatures are dying after they reap just because they're really trying to push. And on your turn, you could just reap and blow it up, and then you could proceed with the rest of your turn. So
Right.
I think it's a pretty powerful uh, card, and if you want it gone, you can fight with it or reap with it. So you have a lot of control. Now, if you drop it and you're going into other houses for a lot of turns, then it can backfire. So
Yeah.
I think you have to really understand how it fits into your deck.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is the biggest problem. Is just um, because like mm, there are definitely decks where you want to stay in the same house several turns in a row if things are going right, and I think that's almost never true about Untamed, and that so um, it's almost best as like a catch up card where it's like okay I'm gonna put this on the I'm a little bit behind on creatures. I'm gonna put this on the board, and my opponent is going to have to deal with it before they use their reap effect, or they're gonna pay a price.
Yep.
Um, but and then the other thing, when you're playing against something like this, you have to think. Like I know sometimes I think people get caught in the trap of thinking almost too long term, and there are times where maybe you have 2 keys and 4 amber, and you're going into your turn, and your opponent has a king of fan on the board, and the right answer is to like let your stuff die,
Yep.
right? Because it doesn't matter, and sometimes people get caught in the trap of thinking, oh, I have to answer that, but it's not always true.
Mm,
So um anyway, that's just something to think about when you're playing against cards like this. Is sometimes the obvious right answer isn't actually the right answer.
right, what you might do toward the end of the game to push to threaten the third key,
Mm,
is different than trying to set up your board state and infrastructure and stuff, which I think is a great part of the design of this game, how
hmm.
your strategy changes as the game progresses.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So next up is one of the better like amber ramp, and I think more consistent. If you well, I guess it depends on what time of the game you get it, but fairly consistent like amber ramp card in it is Low Dawn, and so it's an action with a bonus amber, which is always solid,
Yep.
and it says if there are three or more untamed creatures in your discard pile, gain two, um, which turns into three amber, which is fantastic. And then shuffle each untamed creature from your discard pile into your deck. And I think whether this is good is going to depend on the quality of your untamed creatures. If you have a bunch of really bad untamed creatures, then this is bad, and your deck is probably bad, right? Um,
Yeah.
but if you have if you have a bunch of Mermooks of various um, subtypes and like some other good creatures, then this is fantastic and makes you very happy. So depends.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think if you get this near the end of the w- when you're about to reshuffle your
Mm-hmm.
deck, you could do some pretty interesting deck manipulations, get
Yeah.
drawn to some big untamed hands again, which is nice. Yeah, if you have better play effects like Mad the Mad and Mermooks, or good passive effects, that is certainly stronger than shuffling like Tintaglins back in your deck.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, I think if I don't have three creatures and the creatures are pretty bad, I might not play this,
Yeah.
but I usually will play it. And also, you can have some good bursty turns. Like, let's say you have four amber and you're about to call it Untamed for the first time. Uh, Sometimes, I'll discard my creatures and just play this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think the board is going to go away, or I'm trying to threaten a key, play aggressively in that matchup. So
Yeah.
uh, I've definitely done that before. You can discard Ghost Hawk if it's not going to be relevant, and shuffle it back in. I think this card has a lot of versatility.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Next up is Mab the Mad. This is a one power or two power fairy with a bonus amber on it. This is the one of very few creatures that has a bonus amber on it inherently. And when you reap with it, you shuffle it back into your deck. Um, and importantly, because this is the reap timing. Like if you do have King of Fant out, that you can shuffle this back in before the King destroy it. If
Hmm.
your opponent has like a Blood Shard Imp, you can shuffle it back in before it would die or get stunned or whatever the thing is, right? Um, and yeah, I think it's a pretty good effect.
Hmm. So I've tried to think. So let's say it didn't say that. Then you could keep reaping, right,
Uh huh.
with it until it's dead.
Uh huh.
Um, and it goes back in your deck, and you just play it again and get one. And you have
Uh-huh.
to call Untamed either way.
Yep.
So I guess I'm not sure if I even want to shuffle this back into the deck.
Hmm. Well, I think it's probably better in like it's probably not so good with Flaxia, but is better with like Harmonia and
Hmm.
a natural selection, right? If you use it, fire it before you play a natural selection, then um, that's one less creature you have to destroy. It would definitely be better. Like if you had a second Amber Pip on it, it would be crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think it'd work
yeah,
well with like Full Moon and Hunting Witch, but we don't have those
yeah,
cards.
definitely, definitely you had cards like that. Well, and that's what like if you're playing a Harmonia style deck, then this becomes better because it does
Yeah.
have two Amber Pips, so
Hmm.
functionally at that point. Um,
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see this in Mass Mutation.
Yeah.
Um,
With Enhance.
yeah, although effectively we have that with Rad Penny, so um, and Rad Penny is a lot more reliable
Yeah, that's
without
a
getting shuffled.
steal. Yep.
So yeah, I'm never like really excited to see this in deck because it's not like a it's not particularly interesting. I guess I would say.
Hmm.
But I do think it's pretty good Amber generation and like pretty fine in that regard.
Yeah. I think a creature with Amber on it is nothing to complain about. Um, I just don't know if the effect is a negative. I but yeah, it does have the Harmonious synergy, Dr. Millie synergy, Red Alert. Uh, I suppose if your deck is small,
Mm-hmm.
you could definitely get it back sooner than if it went to the discard.
Yeah.
Yeah, not sure.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so next up we have Mimicry. Action. When you play this card, treat it as a copy of an action card in your opponent's discard pile. I really like this card.
Yeah.
It does so much. It's super fun to play. It can be a utility card for pretty much anything your deck needs. So if you don't have artifact control, but you have a Mimicry, you could get that going. If you don't have a board clear, um, if you just need to get a stop, a Scaling Amber Steel, um, just so powerful. And it gets better, when you play in like more competitive events, and in casual, it's just a lot of fun too. So I really like this card. I'm sad it didn't make it into Mass Mutation. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite cards in the game. In Worlds Collide, it took a bit of a hit because decks seem
Hmm.
to have fewer actions than they did before.
Yep.
So sometimes this card is actually not doing much. Still, I think it's really great.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is like best against, like this is almost certainly best against Coda. Um
Hmm.
and I think like yeah, one of our friends has one with has the deck with three mimicries in it, and like that against Coda control deck is just the most frustrating thing you can imagine, right? Because they're taking these insane um Untamed Amber generation turns while control so bad. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, in Worlds Collide, I think the really super swingy actions are a little fewer. Although if you're playing at somebody with Saurian and like Tribute, pretty insane, I think.
Hmm.
So they're definitely the options out there, but I agree. Worlds Collide and AOA both care a lot about board. Um, tend good decks tend to be heavy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, big fan
Yeah,
of this card. Never sad to see it.
yeah. It's for sure. It's always fun, and I think like yeah, it's one of the cards. And I think like in yeah, I think it's one of the cards that stands out in my mind as being like this is indicative of what Keyforge is.
Hmm.
And like the other one that really stands out in my mind is Wild Wormhole. Um,
Mm.
but and I suspect that with Mass Mutation, because this is the um basically starting with Mass Mutation, there's no card that's all four sets. I suspect that that was something they decided they wanted to do. is hit that milestone of there's no card that's been in every set. My guess is somebody like actually, I don't know, but I imagine somebody writing that on a white point.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
And but if not, then like the two cards that would most obviously be worth keeping, I think, would be Wild Wormhole.
Yeah, I think I agree that those cards are memorable, unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the cards you just love to see and make this game so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. Next up, Nature's Call. So this is a card that isn't so much of a key 4G card, but so sometimes it's not so fun, but it's extremely powerful. So
Uh-huh.
it gives you an Amber Pip and has a really good effect of return up to 3 creatures to their opponent's to their owner's hands. So first of all, it's optional, so you can return 0 to 3 creatures,
Mm-hmm.
um, which gives you tons of flexibility. It gives you Amber, just crazy, and uh, bouncing creatures affects your draw.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to play them again. You couldn't do what you wanted to do uh, when you call that house again. Your opponent, that is, it gets around all the amber protection that Saurian has.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yes.
Imperial Scudam, okay, that just gets bounced back to the hand. Um, so you don't have the combo with like Hunting Witch and Dust Pixie anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can get some interesting combos going with Kirby and Starlines though, because you could bounce Kirby back
Mm-hmm.
or Medic Ingram, then like you're warding multiple creatures or playing multiple actions and getting things really set up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's nice. But yeah, other than Star Alliance, I don't know what kind of fancy combos you could do other than the more straightforward ones like bouncing the Musik Murmuk back to your hand.
Yeah.
Usually I'm using this to mess with Saurians
Yeah.
or just disrupting by sending creatures from multiple houses back to the hand.
Yeah, I agree. In Coda, like I think this is a much more offensive card, and in other words, like it's more about progressing your game state. Whereas
Hmm.
in Worlds Collide, it's more often defensive, where are um, hurting the opponent's game state less, or more so than advancing your own. And like dream of playing this as an offensive card is that your opponent has like a creature in each house that has like a strong fighter reap effect and not a good play effect, and you pop those back to their hands and be like, haha, you know, enjoy, like on your next turn you can one of these.
Yep.
Feels pretty
Yeah,
good.
that is painful. That does feel good. And sometimes you can bounce your own stuff even if you have to wait. So like you bounce Infernus or Ronnie back.
Hmm?
That's not that bad because they know it's coming
Yeah.
down again,
Yep.
and those cards have powerful play effects. So it's not that bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you bounce like the Infernus or the Ronnie, like what what is your opponent gonna do, right? Like they still want to generate the Amber. Um,
Yeah.
it's not like they can really, the best thing they can do with Ronnie is go 6 instead of 7, but um, still feels kind of bad.
Yep. It definitely affects them adversely.
Yeah, dream back to your adverse.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So next up is actually both the Panpacas. So first one is Panpaca Inga, who's a 5 power beast that says creatures to the right of Panpaca Inga on the battle line get +2 power, and then Panpaca Jaga, who 3 power beast with skirmish, and says that creatures to the left of Panpaca Jaga in the battle line gain skirmish. Um, both both pretty cool effects.
Yeah, these cards are really great. Um, I especially like Pamperica Jaga has Skirmish itself.
Yep.
Um, Unfortunately, Anga doesn't boost itself. I guess you could say that it did boost itself because it was
Right.
5 power instead of 3. So that's an interesting touch that I just never thought of until
Oh yeah,
really just now.
if you put these opposite each other, then that you have two 5 power creatures skirmish. Yep.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if you know this or not, but they're actually like supposed to be like tributes to Richard Garfield's sons. So
Yeah, I've heard that, and also like the Avinda and Javinda.
yep.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
Yep.
funny to me, like, so out of the two of these, I prefer Inga. Like if I'm gonna get one or the other, I like getting Inga better.
Hmm.
Um, because I think about like all the creatures that now um are harder to kill, which I
Yep.
guess is like a more defensive mindset, and I know other people too that are more excited about Jaga. I guess must indicate a more offensive mindset. I just think it's an interesting thing that we different ones.
Yeah, I think it depends on your play style, and
Yeah,
um, yeah, I do prefer Jaga. I like both. I seem to see Anga in my decks a lot more.
me too.
Yeah, even though they're both uncommons, and I'm not sure what that's about. But um, maybe Jaga never appears in multiples. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
have no
don't
idea
know.
if that's true or not.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is weird. And you're right. Inga is good in multiples, whereas Jaga is less good in.
right. Yeah, not much of an effect. In Keyforge, I think of fighting as like a control mechanism
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
um, I guess offensively, like I want to reap, right, to
Hmm.
get closer to the goal. And with Jaga, I just shut down your engine.
Right.
Um, and yeah, a lot of decks can just grind to a halt if you continuously fight their board off,
Yeah.
particularly in Worlds Collide.
Yeah. And yeah, I actually I agree with that. I definitely like I I've realized I like playing a lot more than maybe your average player.
Hmm.
Um, but again, like to me, it's like Enga is the more exciting board control card. I know it sounds silly, but to me, it's like okay, cool. With Enga on the board, I can hit stuff, and yeah, I take damage, so I can't do it twice. But usually one good turn, creatures with +2 power hitting stuff, and like you're solidly anyway. But
Hmm.
again, I just think it's to like difference in play style and yeah, I don't know, lots of fun happening.
Yeah, so I have a question for you. If your opponent had both out, which one are you taking out first?
Oh, that's a good point. I kill the Jaga first. Yep, 100%.
Mm,
I mean, unless I know I can kill both on the same turn, right? Then I probably kill the Inga first, so the Jaga is easier. But yeah, for sure, I kill the Jaga first.
yeah, I'm curious what other people would say.
Hmm. Is that your answer too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I yeah, I know the answer like 100%. That's not a hard answer, but it is funny to me that I prefer the one that I feel less threatened by.
Threatened by,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's weird.
Huh.
I don't know. All right.
All right. Next up, we've got the Feathered Shaman, 2 power, Human Witch, elusive, fight reap, ward each of the Feathered Shaman's neighbors. I'm not too excited by this card. Pretty finicky. I think a
Mm,
turn 1 play, it's nice because you could put some stuff next to it and then eventually ward it. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I think maybe they suspected this card was like too powerful and toned it down. I think it
Hmm.
maybe toned down a little too much.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a deploy here, maybe.
Hmm.
So it seems a much worse version of Medic Ingram.
Yeah, I even think with a play fight reap it could be better. It would be
Yeah.
okay. Um,
Hmm.
I think though, like, I mean, yeah, if you get an engine going that evolves, like if you get the engine going, it's a really cool card.
Yeah.
Um, so and I mean, and there are some pretty cool engines like in I don't think I've had this with Star Alliance, but I could imagine some stuff like Commander Chan. Um,
Oh yeah.
but even like I think I've had this with Tharian or um and yeah, once you get that first reap in, suddenly it's like pretty good. But yeah, 2 power is a little too yeah. I think though it usually is a threat that the enemy wants to kill pretty quick. So how's that going?
Yeah, I think I would. It would depend on what they had in their list, um,
Yep.
like how badly I'd want to get rid of this. But, I mean, you could still get rid of wards too. I mean, this seems to be to me about as much of an impediment as like a taunt, maybe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I could see this getting out of hand, but the fact that it's limited to neighbors, it doesn't even ward itself.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't played with it too much though, so there might be some combos where it works pretty well.
Yeah, it just it depends on whether you can get the stuff out. That's the problem. You can get it if you can get it out. Like if you get it between like a Brutodon and a Thero, Turian,
Hmm.
like that's pretty sweet, right? Um but how often do you land that board state? And that's why I like deck that can do that. I don't a lot to that kind of state.
Yeah, and the ward being limited to the neighbors.
Yeah,
You have Hologramophone, Ingram, Imperium that could just ward anywhere.
yeah,
So yeah, it's just
yep,
underwhelming to me.
yep.
Okay, then we've got Wild Spirit upgrade with the Amber Pip. This creature gains Reap Capture 1. I think this card's is pretty decent. Um, and the reason I say that, so the effect is not that interesting. However, being an Untamed, where the Amber control is lacking, uh, having this is pretty helpful, particularly as an upgrade because you could attach it to another creature, like let's say Senator Strix or
Right.
someone with a Scutum that can do stuff with Amber. Um, did this card get reprinted in Mass
Question.
Mutation?
Yeah,
Because if it did, like you have
it did.
Heart Standard, uh,
Yep.
Spoils of Battle. I think it's pretty cool stuff that you could do. So I think this card's is pretty decent.
Hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
Um. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think if you get this on, usually if you get this with Saurian, right, like it becomes pretty interesting. Saurian creature.
Hmm.
Um, obviously if you have it with like one of the Saurian creatures that has a kind of a global effect like Brackus, then and you don't need Saurian. But I think as an Amber control effect, it's so scattered in Untamed, like uh, the impact is low. That's kind of my view. Stuff with it being lower impact because you're gonna have like an Untamed setup where this is the only the Amber control card you have.
Hmm.
And it goes back to that same problem you have with Song of the Wild, where you really need to keep creatures on the board, and it's hard to. So maybe if you got this with a Ghost Hawk, right? Suddenly that would
Hmm.
be that much better, or like with a
Yep.
couple of Ghost Hawks.
Yep.
Um, but otherwise, it's not bad, right? Like I'd probably rather have this than Song of the Wild. Um,
Hmm.
but um, but it's never like oh, this is going to change. It's almost never a this is hard.
Yeah, it's a stop that requires you to have a ready untamed creature to use it.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
think that's the problem.
that's an interesting question, though. Would you rather have this or Song of the Wild? I think it totally depends on the lineup.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but
It
this
depends on
card,
how many Ghost Talks you have.
yeah, I'm not too sad to see this card. I mean, but it's
Yeah, it's
not something
fine.
I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah, it's fine. It's just almost never like.
Yeah, and it's captured so they can get it back too.
Mhm.
Like if it's just lose one or something, your opponent lose one,
Yep.
that would be interesting.
Yep. Okay, so we are now jumping into the realm of the rares. So we're gonna
Mm.
see even more reprints here, um, but still some really cool stuff and um, or weird stuff. So so we'll start out with the creeds. The first of those is Creed of Nature, which is an artifact with Omni. Sacrifice it, and if you do choose a creature, for the remainder of the turn, that creature skirmish and assault X. X is its power. Um, um, this seems really weak to me, partially because I think, well, I guess it's Omni, but partially because there, there's just not that many opportunities where I'm going to be fighting twice with turn.
Hmm.
So, um, I don't know if you had this on. Maybe if you had this on a Saurian deck, it would suddenly be better. But because you could like Golden Spiral, Goddess Raptor or something. But
Yeah,
um, this one just doesn't seem very exciting to me. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah. This just seems like a complicated way to say destroy a creature and on an omni artifact. Like
Yeah.
it's it's pretty boring. Uh, I think if this were just an action and like an action on an artifact, and you could keep doing it,
Yes.
um, that would be cool. But as a consumable artifact that can maybe destroy a creature, pretty weak.
Yep. Okay. So the other creed though is Creed of Nurture, and this one I think is more interesting. So it has Omni, sacrifice it. If you do, reveal a creature from your hand and choose a creature in play. For the remainder of the turn, the chosen creature gains the text box of the revealed creature. So that's actually like a much more interesting effect. You're revealing a card from your hand and
Hmm.
you're like copying the text from it onto a creature in that's in play. Um, yeah, that can I think lead to some more weird stuff.
Yep.
Um, so I have one particular deck that has this card, and it has two situations that can really benefit from it. One is an eye turn, where if I can have a second eye, and especially in a mirror match, then that means I can discard a discard, purge one of my discards and one of yours, and steal two, and that becomes really good.
Hmm.
Um, and then the other great setup is sometimes I've been able to get into a place where I can on Dilophosaurus before going into a Cincinnatus spiral combo, and suddenly I
Oh
have two
wow.
Dilophosaurus essentially on the board, except they're named differently, right? So rule of 6 doesn't even apply. And at that
Nice.
point, you've burned through your deck almost. So that I had somebody once say, "Oh, that's the first time I've effect." So it can be. I don't know. Have you seen particularly cool generate combos?
Hmm. So I haven't personally seen that. I wish I have. Like that combo sounds pretty awesome.
Mm,
And yeah, maybe after this I'll sit around thinking of ways
mm,
to break this card. I also think this card kind of pushes the rules discussion a
mm-hmm,
lot. So uh, I think it's cool that they break cards like this.
mm-hmm.
Uh, I found that when it turns up in decks I've played with, for some reason I just can't really get it to do that much.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the right card in my hand. Like if I had that card in my hand that with a good effect, I probably with a good effect that needs to reap or something, like let's say
Uh-huh.
Follicosaurus, I would be more inclined to call that house and play the card.
Yeah.
So in a sense, like I would generally not have cards with good effects in my hand unless I happen to draw it.
Right.
Um, but I think I wasn't trying to play toward creative nurture. I think if you have a really big combo and you're playing toward it, you could keep those cards in your hand. I guess the way I play, I didn't pay much attention to it, and so it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like it does very much. But I'm inspired now to go look at my decks with creative nurture and see what kind of stuff I could
Well,
pull off.
good luck. I will be really excited to hear what you find. I think like one of the there's an inherent problem in trying to play a combo anyway,
Mhm.
right? Um and my best experiences with this have kind of been like I don't count on it, right? The deck is fine without it, but then and there it's almost I don't know if you've heard like there's discussion about like cards. I know that's like
Mhm.
a concept in Magic. Um, Sometimes it's that, right? Like where it's like, okay, I was gonna have a great turn anyway, and now I just have an obscene great turn.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not really necessarily changing, just making me have a lot of fun. Um, but I like that. I think that's fine. And absolutely, I think if you could build a deck around this, it would be not okay.
Yeah, yeah. In a constructed format, like you could totally
Yes.
break and just try to set up those Cincinnatus rule of six,
Yeah.
just generate.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's there are terrible things to happen. Oh,
Yeah.
I hadn't even I hadn't even thought of the possibility in that deck I could potentially like set up a Theros and be a second Cincinnatus and bounce them.
Ooh. How would you
Oh,
bounce?
well, I mean like
Oh, they just
if you
trigger
reveal the
each other. They're
Cincinnatus from
ready.
hand and
Yeah.
put that text onto the Thero and then you play the Cincinnatus, yeah, you fight with the Thero, exalt it and ready everything, including the Cincinnatus, and the Cincinnatus can ready Thero. So you still rule of 6 everything else, but yeah, that's kind of hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that hasn't come up, but that's an interesting thing that could happen.
Yeah. I think like Mimic Gel would be a simpler way to do that. But with Creative
Yes,
Nurture, you
yes,
could fire it on in one turn potentially
right,
with the Golden Spiral.
right, exactly. Hmm.
Actually, I wonder what happens if you pick Creative Nurture in the Mimic Gel. Does the game just break?
Um, I would almost guarantee you that TCO will break. But well, actually though, the interesting thing about Creative Nurture is it doesn't apply to like it doesn't not that it doesn't apply. Well, it doesn't do anything for play effects unless you have a Compsos Specs on the board.
Right. Yeah, so I guess if you picked Mimic Gel, it would gain the text box and it would all be irrelevant.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah. I guess I was thinking in my head like the power applied to, but that doesn't say that. So
No, that would
never
be,
mind.
yeah, that'd be, even Cyberclone's like a much more reasonably designed mimic gel.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people over at TCO were like really Cyberclone came out and they were like, this we can handle this. Um, I think it might be better now, but there for a long time. So I have a deck with 2 mimic gels, and for a long time I just couldn't play it on TCO because as soon as you put a second mimic gel into play, the server would just crash.
Yeah. I think
Which isn't
that
shocking.
card is probably very difficult to implement, and
Yes.
I mean, I haven't looked at their code. I don't know what they did. It's like if it just copies like a reference to another card, like you could run into some problems.
Yeah.
But that card must be very difficult to program. So
Yep.
props to TCO for all their good work.
Oh yeah. All right.
Okay. Next up we have Curiosity. It's action with Amber Pip. Play destroy each scientist creature. It's great flavor. I love it
Mm-hmm.
has all the cats taking apart the robot. I think that's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have logos in your deck, this card is more of a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, since logos is kind of consistently top tier house, it's actually pretty good to have one-sided clear of some of the most annoying logos creatures, such as Eddie and Bibliophile and Wormhole Technician, Quant, uh, Apsis. I believe they're all scientists. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Eddie is a AI scientist, I think. Titan Guardian, I'm not sure. But maybe you don't want to blow up
I
that one
think
anyway.
Titan Guardian it is. I'll double. I think it is.
Yeah, maybe it's a cyborg. I don't know.
Um, I think it's a cyborg scientist. Most of the Titans are. No, this one's
Yeah.
a beast cyborg. Oh,
Oh, it's a beast. Oh, interesting. Huh. Uh, anyway, yeah, Curiosity basically you blow up their logos. Um, so it's one of those house hate cards, and I I think it's pretty good.
yep.
What do you think?
Um, yeah, I think it's great. It's obviously situationally really strong.
Mhm.
And in the wrong situation, like it's an amber or I guess have scientists that would just heck. And I agree, the flavor's so good. It's almost it's a bummer that this card of all cards didn't make it into mass mutation. Actually have cats, but
Yeah.
um, but that's okay. Um,
Maybe this is a preview of the cat, like
yeah,
what is the cat called? Like
I
Flume
I have this
or Lumilla?
yeah Lumilu, right?
Lumilla.
I have this like terrible struggle going on in my head where like I I really, and I think actually like Brad was really the pun of this card. I want to explain because it's so God, like he just it's really on the nose, just subtle enough that I feel like, oh, I want to. I think Brad's like,
Yeah. Do you want to explain the pun, or is it just an
no,
invitation
I'm
to
holding myself
people to
back.
look
I'm
back,
I'm holding
look
myself
into
back,
this?
but you're welcome to. I'm
No,
exercising
that's
self
fine.
control here.
Yeah.
I'm sure if
If
people
you're
Google
interested,
cat and
look it
curiosity,
up.
they'll figure it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Next card. Elder Despair. 5 power, beast, leader, and witch. So this will die to an entropic swirl. Gain 3.
Mm-hmm.
Assault 3. While Elder Despair is in the center of your battle line, it gains before a fight, gain 2. Okay. So even without the center of the battle line stuff, it's Ancient Bear, but it has more assault.
Mm-hmm.
So already is pretty decent. Then the ability is a bit underwhelming. I like the leaders. I prefer the leaders who affect everyone in the battle line or really
Yeah.
warp the game state. So like Zenzi, Lord Invidious, even Calyx Stonefather. Um, this one and the Shadow Council is kind of like, okay, it just has a more powerful effect
Mm-hmm.
if it's in the middle. Uh, it's still good. I just wish it did more, but I shouldn't complain too much about it because it's a good card.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Ancient Bear is a good card, so
Uh-huh.
this is just better than that card straight up. And the before fight, so you do get get that even if the creature does the assault damage, um, which is good. The assault can help you with wards, and and you get amber. So not complaining about this card. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like forefront of the um forefront of or for, the number one for me is Val, and that's just because I think Zenzi might be better. I'm not sure, but Val is more fun. Um,
Hmm.
so I think, but Val is both very good and very fun. Um, and then Zenzi is also really good and fun. And then, like you said, Invidious just like is sitting there like you need something about this immediately.
Hmm.
And it's going to be hard, right? Because so so definitely this is lower on that list of leaders.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's funny just how incongruent the effect and the art are. Like, and they address it in the flavor text. But Elder Bear just
Yeah,
looks so cuddly and friendly. But no, Elder Bear is coming for
yeah. I really like the flavor there.
you. Yeah. Um, and yeah, and if there's like a fun little balance mechanism. I mean, Entropic Swirl is a rare, but it's right. It's like an balance. Yeah, the leads are super, but Entropic Swirl likes them.
Yeah, and you're right. Like it's a pretty one-off situation. It was just something that uh, I just thought was like interesting novelty.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't think there's any leader that Entropic Swirl. Still, go.
Does
Um,
Invidious have 3 traits?
I believe every leader has three. Yeah, that's like indicative of a leader. Double check.
Yeah, so Val is human and something else and leader.
Oh, I'm wrong. I lied. Lord Invidious is a leader. Oh man, embarrassed. I have an embarrassed. And Val is human.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, no, that's okay. Way to burst my bubble. No, totally. Yeah, those are just okay. Whatever. I'm just gonna go covers Batman.
Mhm.
um. Okay. So next up is Fuzzy Ruin. This is a 5 power beast with 2 Amber Pips, which is important, and then play your opponent. And that's, I mean, seems good to me.
Yeah, it's real good. one of my favorite cards. Hard to say anything bad about this. I mean,
Mm.
sometimes okay, they gain one, you put them on key, that's bad.
Hmm.
Uh, but sometimes that can be food for shadows later.
Yeah, and even then, I think that's like it's good design. That there are times where you're bad about
Hmm.
probably.
Yeah. So, um, I've one of my favorite decks has this card. I've used this card a lot, and it's like 95% of the time it's really good. Um, like that drawback I think is pretty reasonable, and I've discarded this card not often.
Yeah, and it was in Coda, and there it was alongside Fertility Champ, also the the trade off, right? Doesn't have that play effect or more power. That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and I've had more issues with fertility chant actually.
Hmm.
Like gaining two amber,
Yeah,
it's I think pretty different than gaining one. Like you're more likely to run into issues, and also you could be punished for fertility chant um, by Infernus or uh, interdimensional graft or something like that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. This is.
Yeah, and I love the big body 5 power. That's great.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, getting to ram.
Hmm.
Okay, and then next up is Giant Nobil, 5 power B, that says after a player house, that player destroys an artifact of that house. And okay, I just want to say, it's funny because when we were talking about Rustnar, I was thinking, man, I think Untamed in general has almost had like a of dealing with artifacts. Um, Rustnar might not be the most powerful example. I actually think general has this really interesting where it blows the artifacts up before the turn starts, and I think there are very few cases that have interesting timing conflicts, but one of them is general or the active player died. You choose Star Alliance, you decide whether you want. I haven't run into.
So does the general order after you choose your house is when it happens, or
Yeah.
at
Yep.
the start of the turn? Okay.
Oh wait. Oh no, you're right. It is start of turn. Um, what's after you? Maybe there are there any after. Oh, the only one that says after you shoot the house, maybe.
Oh, so if you blew up Snag's mirror, well, you would want to blow it up after so you can get the block and they can't use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's.
Yeah. I think that the theme of like the animals eating the technology and like priceless relics, I think it's pretty good flavor. It's funny.
Hmm.
And the giant Nobel, so it's very similar to Tekavor Pulpate in Star Alliance.
Hmm.
So it's the same power, 5 power, and blows up all artifacts of the house instead of just one. Blowing up just one. So that the player gets to pick. So if they have multiple, they could just pick the worst one.
Or if
And
it's a
then
mirror match, right?
if it's a mirror match, yes, I could blow up one of their artifacts. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, and if I had one, I would. I would not blow it up, whereas Technical Pulpit would blow up both. So I guess they're different. I found that the other one generally has more impact, just because it could blow up multiple. But I think this card is pretty strong because you can get rid of it when you don't like it anymore. Um, and maybe had the you can use this to blow up your Fang Tooth. What are the good artifacts in this set and Untamed? I
Um,
Just
I
Fang
really
Tooth,
think
right?
Fangtooth is basically it. Yeah. Because you have like, well, we're coming up on a couple that I think are not really good, and then
Hmm.
the creeds are like not uh, less interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the one really.
yeah. So I think this card doesn't hurt you much in Untamed. Could hurt you in other houses. I think it's a turn one play. It's pretty good because uh, they want to set up some artifacts maybe, and now they can't. But you can't either. So it it depends on the kind of deck it could be in. I think it just could work pretty badly in decks like Razzle Dazzle. But
Mhm.
against decks like that could work well. And Razzle Dazzle is a deck that has like 3 memory chips and
Right.
2 hologramophones and
Right.
among other key to dis.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it'd be super good against that. Holy cow! I didn't.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. It's really hard to argue at the end of the day. Like, it's really hard to argue with a 5 power creature, right? Like, get a 5 power creature, even if you're in a matchup where they have no artifacts or something. Like, still probably fine to have a 5 power creature.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And then next up we had Gravid Cycle. Um, I, I like the art here a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amber Pit, Omega. Return a card from your discard pile to your hand. Hmm. Uh, I don't know. It's an effect when I look at it. It looks really good. Um, I don't feel I've gotten much mileage out of this because you're very clearly telegraphing what's about to happen. Um,
Yes.
so if I pull back like burn the stockpile, let's say, um, that I mean that card's not relevant in this set, but just an example.
Right.
Like you're not gonna go to 7, so I have to discard it. Or I pulled back a card of a house I didn't even want to call, and it's kind of cluttering things up. So this just seems like, I mean, the Nepenthe just seems so much better to me. Um, and I
Yeah.
do think this card is the effect is strong, and I think in a top tier deck, this could be pretty good. Depending on what kind of things happen, and
Yeah.
even if you telegraph like too much protect, like they know you have it and they have to behave
Right.
accordingly.
Yeah. I think like there are some cards that okay. So some decks operate this came up in a conversation. But like there are some decks that operate on a kind of inevitability where it's like I'm doing this thing and like so yeah, I'm gonna get this piece that's about it. Um and that's where Gravid Cycle is best, I think. Um where the telegraphing part doesn't matter. So
Hmm.
I compare this to Glimmer a lot, which obviously like away, but they were okay. Um it's basically like Glimmer is a more untamed focused card, whereas Gravid Cycle tends to empower your houses.
Yep.
Um, so that's just that that'll influence. But But I agree. Nepenthe Seed is a little better. Just you're not telegraphing. You kind of decide in what's better.
Hmm.
At the same time, it's a little guy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a trade off, and I think it's fine. I think it's a good card that I'm not sad.
Yeah. I'm excited if I see this as my rare in Untamed. I,
Yes.
I'm I'm pretty excited, especially compared to, well, I would rather see it than the Creeds for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I think I'd rather see Fuzzy Gruin, but maybe I'd rather see Gravid Cycle than El Despair.
Hmm. Yeah, one way to think about cards is they increase player choice, right? Do they make people? And I feel like
Yep.
Gravid Cycle rather, um, is a card that makes you okay. I'm calling
Yep.
good.
Works for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Uh, Ink of the Spider. 1 power beast. Has poison. Play, reap, stun a creature. Uh, I like this card. It's like Bramble Links. Does multiple things that are interesting. You can use it as a landmine. Not really landmine. Like a grenade,
Hmm.
right? Like if it fights something, it'll die. But you can use it to take something out for sure. And as long as it's still on the board, it's messing up your opponent's engine. And play stun is pretty powerful. So like cards like Lady Maxena and Smash, I mean they were pretty decent. And maybe that's not the cards you think of as like the best cards, um, but they're pretty good. And this card does that and other stuff. And I think the 1 power, I mean, by the time you play it, it's already done a lot of its job. So uh, I think it's a pretty good card. It is a little awkward in Untamed,
Hmm.
just because it's not getting you amber
Right.
or facilitating that in any way. Like it's more of a creature control thing. But I think it's good to have cards like that in there.
Yeah. Gosh. So yeah, I about like big, and I think like big twig a little better of like a card
Hmm.
from but yeah, I agree. Like play stun is fine. Being able to kill something big is good if you keep it. Um, but it is a little more on the side of control versus dancing.
Yeah, and actually, if you're winning a lot, you have to start studying yourself,
Right.
which isn't great.
Right. Yep. Yep. It does feel bad for sure.
Yeah, particularly in early game, like let's say you have 2 untamed creatures and they have no board. That I mean, that's not that unusual, and like you might end up having to stun yourself.
Hmm.
But I think usually this card works out pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um. Okay. So next up is more wolf. This is a 2 power beast and wolf with skirmish, and when you play it, you ready each wolf. And I believe when you get this, the minimum. This is kind of like Plague Rats, that when you get one of these,
Yeah,
you guarantee at least multiple. But do you know what the minimum?
I've seen as low as 3.
Okay, and I want to say the max is 5. Um, I,
I think I've seen more than 5.
okay, okay.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
Hmm.
we could easily check.
Yeah. So, and the problem I have with this card, compared to Plague Rats, especially, is that it runs into the rule of 6 so quick.
Yep.
Um, that it ends up being frustrating to um and the other problem is 2-power skirmish is so underwhelming
Mm-hmm.
that you almost always want to use it for the reap instead of the fight, but yeah, I don't know, I don't love it fast.
Yeah, that I agree that that is the biggest drawback with this card. I wish it said something like playing this card doesn't count for that.
Hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you still limit it to 6 uses, but you don't, you could potentially have a big turn. Like you
Yeah.
can Gray Riders up to, I guess, 5 from hand. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that elusive 6/3.
yeah, and if you had another Sanctum creature, you could go up to 6 from hand, I think, because you play one and then reap 5 times, and the first one or the last one make someone else
Yeah.
reap, or the first one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to check the math on that. Actually, maybe it's even 7 because
So
you send the first one out, reap with a neighboring creature,
right.
second one reap with Gray Rider, blah blah blah, and then the last Gray Rider ready someone else.
Yeah, no, I think you end up at 5 with that unless you have
But like every time you used or played Gray Rider, you got an Amber.
right.
Oh, so that's just 6.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, but if
Um,
those creatures were used, then that would be up to 8. They reaped.
right. Um,
Okay, but
by
yeah,
by
I
the
think
way,
Rise would know this.
I did quick research. There is a single deck that has 7 more.
Uh,
Um, compared to, I think the number for that's is bigger, and then apparently there are 40 decks with but at 5 there are a lot
mhm.
more.
Yeah, I have. I think most of mine have 5. I have seen 3. I think I have a deck that's 3.
It's so interesting because compare that to Plague Rats, there are over 1,000 decks with 7 Plague Rats.
Mm-hmm.
So I the affinity there, like however the algorithm is deciding to a little different, and oddly, and well, I guess not random weird fact, the highest SAS 7 Plague Rat deck in the actually a worldwide deck. um, so that's funny,
Yeah, I think
believable,
SAS um, and AOA
not
uh,
friends.
didn't didn't get along. I mean, a lot of the AOA cards don't do that much from hand. I think they
Right.
can plug into like a system and really get going, um, which I think that after you start to get beyond like interactions between 2 cards is actually very complex
Yeah.
to like understand that in a systematic way. So I think that's why
Hmm.
um, those things are more difficult to pick up on. That said, I personally don't believe that AOA even has like those like really hidden combos that aren't picked up by SAS. Like I think they exist, but I've also think we've seen in competition that unfortunately those decks in AOA just have a lot of trouble hanging.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Yeah, except for like a few really crazy outliers. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some pretty good decks out there, like Break decks and um, Finite Rupture and Dimensional Graft and Martian Generosity, Key Abduction, um, like
Yeah.
Gray Rider decks, Gangernaut decks. But yeah, I think that set has some issues.
Yep. For
It's
sure.
a fun set though. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always happy when I can bring it to the team.
Yeah,
Definitely, definitely fun stuff there.
yeah. More Wolf. Anything else to say about that? I think so. One of the deck I opened in a sealed store champs had more Wolves, and it also had Shattered Throne and Tribune Pompidus. That was a lot
Hmm.
of fun
Hmm.
because they're getting bigger every time they fight.
Right. Oh, yeah, that could be good.
Yeah, so that was nice. Usually though, I actually only want to see three really because
Right.
once you get more, you're getting more dead draws. And with Rule of
Right.
Six, you can only pay up to three from hand anyway. So that's the biggest turn you could possibly have. Um,
Yeah. If you start with 3 on the board and you use all 3 of them and you play a fourth one,
mhm.
you can only actually use 2 ones on board.
Yeah, I think that there should have been an exception for this card, and
Yes.
I don't think it would be overpowered. I
Mm-mm.
think using it more than 6 times, I'm skeptical about allowing that for any card, just in case something
Right.
degenerate happens. But I think playing, having it playing not count. I can't think of a way where you could just play this over and over and it would matter.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It would make it better, but not better enough to bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe some crazy hunting witch, like you could just put it back in your hand and play it in
Yeah.
infinite times. Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Okay. Cool. So, next up is Nepeta Gigantica, an artifact that's action, stun a creature power 5 or higher, or stun a giant creature. Occasionally stunning a creature is fine, but generally speaking, I think this is like a really underwhelming effect. Like, I don't understand why it doesn't.
Yeah, this card's pretty weak. Uh, is there an artifact that just straight up stuns over and over? I'm not sure that there is.
No, yeah, I think this.
Yeah, I mean they're the ones that stun if you do something like Orb Invidious.
Yeah,
So I suppose this is unique that it actually does that. The stipulations are just so strict. I mean, there are not even that many giants that have over that under 5 power. So be a good shorties.
yeah, this goes under like
Bramo,
hashtag
yeah,
oddly specific.
yeah. Like, there's some, yeah. I don't get it. Like this card's just so weak. I'm
But it's
glad it's
okay.
rare.
Like I think rares in Keyforge are often oddly specific, and this isn't like an outlier in that. Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I think this is down there with like Osmo. Well,
I
you could
love
stun some
Ozma.
Saurians. Yeah, Osmo. Oh my goodness.
Uh,
You could stun some Saurians with this, and
uh,
I'm really grasping here. This is. Let's just move on.
right.
Okay. Perilous Wild. This is a nice card.
Hmm.
Amber action. Okay. Play. Destroy each elusive creature. Uh, I like the picture with like the hat and the bog and someone's hand reaching out. And this could go against you with the imprinted Mermooks,
Hmm.
um, but it could also get a lot of annoying cards off the table. Uh, but actually, I've probably get more mileage out of Curiosity than Perilous Wild.
Hmm.
What are the elusive creatures that you really want to get rid of?
Rumux, Harmonia, Dew Fairy, Daughter,
Hmm.
uh, Crassosaur.
I would love to see a Crossosaurus killed by this.
Uh,
Yeah, so I mean they're out there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No,
Naughty the Thief, it blows it up.
well, and the extra value out of this is right. Killing an elusive creature is 2 fights, which is super annoying. And so if you get this in the right setup, where like you're blowing up your opponent's creatures that would have cost you a lot to kill,
Hmm.
it's super good. But yeah, very situational for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually, about fighting, because one of my favorite decks relies a lot on fighting to control the board, and I've found it runs into problems against decks with a lot of elusive creatures.
Hmm.
And if this if I had this card in it, that would be really helpful.
Hmm. I wouldn't even mind having this like in a deck with Crassosaurus if I also had a Ludo.
Oh yeah, capture, and then they have one turn to get it back before it's gone.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, pretty good. Okay. Also on the subject of potentially destroying a lot of creatures on both sides, we have Piranha Monkeys, 2 power beast, play reap, heal 2 to each other creature. This is a this is a pretty interesting card.
Hmm.
I can't say that I've seen it too much in Worlds Collide,
Hmm.
um, which kind of a shame because I like it. I think against wards it's very good. Um, if you could repeat the effect, that's quite annoying. Um,
Hmm.
it does destroy your stuff too, so it goes well with Saurian, um,
Hmm.
or Grobnar. And if they have weaker houses, sometimes you just urgently
Yeah.
need a clear, and you
Hmm.
might draw into this, and that can be really great.
Yeah, that's like my experience with it is because it hits your own too. It tends to be really rough when you want to be controlling the board. And if your opponent wants to be like if they're playing Sarian and Brobnar maybe, right, then they're just going to kill this right away. So you're going to get off that 2 damage spray that you would have gotten from like a Shadow Wave or something. Um, and then they're going to kill it because if they want board control, then A, they're going to want this dead, and B, they're going to have the means. So, um, yeah, it's interesting, but I think oftentimes doesn't work out to be like super game changing. Okay, so next up is Pose Pixies. This one's back from AOA. It's a 1 power fairy with elusive, and it says the amber stolen or captured from your pool is taken from the common supply instead. Um, and this is like one of the more interesting effects in the game. I think just
Hmm?
because it deactivates a lot of strategies. It's like super easy to kill, um, but if you can keep it on the board, if you can protect it, then it's like a really effective answer. And because it's a rare, most people don't have experience playing against it, and kind of
Hmm.
in my experience, a lot of people kind of freak out and don't know what to do.
Yeah. I wish this card had a lower rarity. Like I think it
Hmm.
would be a great balance against Amber Control. It really fits well with the theme of Untamed. Of we're just trying to push a lot of Amber, and this really helps protect your Amber by turning captures into exalts and nerfing stealing.
Yeah.
So I think I would really like to see this as like uncommon, perhaps.
Hmm.
It's very weak,
Yeah.
but I think the effect is powerful.
Hmm.
Um, so it's pretty good card. I like it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to see this card, but it's not a card that um, it won't carry your deck. Like it's a card that's
Right.
helpful to have around,
Right.
uh, and it could maybe save you in a pinch. But I don't think this would be the linchpin of your strategy. Like I had a Saurian, actually that sealed deck I was talking about earlier with the Moorwolves. Like it also had opposed Pixies,
Hmm.
and I had 3 Tricerian Legionaries, and I could protect this card very well. But
Hmm.
in practice, it did a little bit of stuff, but wasn't like super interesting. And
Mm.
actually, a lot of the steel cards can do damage. So
Right.
you could
Right.
just get like J-Vid off the table or something.
Right. Yeah. For it to be really effective, you need to be able to ward it too. Or I have a deck that has this with Hadroth's Wall, and that can really help.
Oh yeah, yeah. 3 power is a lot more durable.
If you have it taunted on a flank at 3 power with elusive, suddenly it has like quite a bit more durability. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that deck actually has 2 of them, which helps a little as well. Um,
Oh, that's pretty neat.
yeah, yeah, it's fun. It makes seal and capture decks freak out, but but then I wonder, like, I mean, hmm, Odoak is really nice. Like
Yeah,
Odoak just ends up being a little more prevalent and a little easier to keep on the board, and both because of its power level and because it comes in a house that has 2 taunt creatures and a lot of wards, whereas Pose Pixies comes in a house with no taunt creatures and very few wards. So um,
yeah.
it makes quite a difference.
And the trade-off you get is it's elusive.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Yep.
Oh, and of course the capturing turns into exalt.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Odoak is far stronger.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Okay, so next up is punctuated equilibrium. This is an action, and it says each player discards their card, then refills their hand as if it were the end of their turn. It- I love this card just because it's so interesting, right? Like it doesn't. Sometimes it can be really good. Obviously, if this is the 6th Untamed card you're playing in your hand, and then you
Mhm.
draw into like 3 more, then you've had a really good turn. But also, this is a really good way to make your opponent dump combo cards if they're playing a combo deck. Um, and just generally speaking, it's a really interesting, fun card. So I like it.
Yeah, I love this card.
I think.
It
Hmm.
it can really let things get out of control in a good way for you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think my worst punctuated equilibrium experience was when it was a prime that we both went to up in Sacramento,
Hmm.
and uh, it was the top 8 round. I got knocked out, and this card played a part in it because I had held a doorstep for just the right moment, and right at the right moment, she played punctuated equilibrium and knocked the doorstep out of my hand and like ruined my life. um,
Ouch.
but but I love that. Like that's such a fun. Um, it's great. So I wasn't very happy in the moment, but looking back, it was such a great Keyforge moment.
Absolutely. And I mean, how do you even play out around that? It's like you play the cards you want to hold so that you might draw it later. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I mean, our archive is really the answer, and then hope you're not playing as
Hmm.
somebody with Dysania. But that's the sort of like rock paper scissors of Keyforge. So it's great.
Yeah, I think I need to think more about when I look at a list and I see this card. And right now, I
Mm.
just don't do anything differently. And maybe there's some smart ways to play around this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I knew that was gonna happen, then I would have played it earlier, right? And just gotten the amber and cycled more. But
Hmm.
so maybe that was. But I think I was doing the right thing, and she just like played a good card at the right moment, and that
Yeah.
again, that's card games.
Yep. And I mean, maybe she was holding that card. Maybe she
Yeah,
drew it. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, hundred
it is.
percent.
It is a swingy card. It leads to some very fun plays,
Yeah.
and it can really accelerate things too. If you've played a lot of Untamed cards and you draw into some more, could go well with load on or something. Like if you know what's coming up in the
Mm-hmm.
rest of your deck and you punctuated into like way more Untamed and you played like 9 or 10 cards in a turn,
Mm.
um, that could be pretty good.
Yeah.
Uh, I know this is Worlds Collide, but this card is also the Mass Mutation. One situation where I found myself unable to play this card is if they put out an autoencoder
Right.
because they're going to be archiving a lot.
Right. Seems
And
bad.
yeah, that was the first time in my life I discarded this card.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems yeah, not so good. If they're on like one card in their deck or something, then maybe you do it and are like, okay, they're gonna get one archive out of it, and then they're gonna draw six. But
Hmm.
otherwise, ugh, gross.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the I think that's one of the chase combos in Mass Mutation is to have this in a deck with autoencoders so you can do that to yourself.
Yeah. Like Archive 5 is excellent.
Seems okay. Yep. All right.
Okay. Next up, we have Quicksand, Amber Pip action. Destroy the most powerful creature controlled by each player who does not control a ready untamed creature. This card is pretty good. Um, Generally, you'll be able to benefit from it and your opponent won't. So,
Mm-hmm.
destroy your opponent's most powerful creature is a nice effect, particularly with an Amber Pip. Sometimes this does backfire.
Mm-hmm.
So, this card has bailed me out a few times. But I think it's just okay.
Yeah, I can imagine like so partially because Untamed isn't doesn't tend to be that high up the power curve for Worlds Collide. Like
Hmm.
if you're playing this against another Worlds Collide deck and you have it in a really good deck, then great, right? Like the chance that this will help you and hurt your opponent is pretty high.
Hmm.
Um, but that's a whole set of circumstance. Like that's a lot of ifs. So, if you're playing against like an untamed or a coda deck or something like that, that maybe the likelihood that they have an untamed creature out just jumped. Um,
Hmm.
and so it just becomes a little more iffy. But even like even if it destroys, I don't know. I often just think like, okay, if it destroys one of mine and doesn't destroy one of theirs, like I got the amber, so and if 3/4 of the time it helps me more than it hurts them, and that 1/4 of the time it's just an amber and I lose a creature, then it's probably okay on
Yeah,
balance.
yeah. I think it works well sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't do too much. Destroying a creature is more impactful than some of the other effects we've looked at, um,
Mhm.
like healing a creature or something. So
Mhm.
I think when I see this card, I'm ambivalent about it. I'm
Mhm.
not sad to see it. I'm not jumping for joy either.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. Fair.
All right. Next up, we have Roxador. creature with 4 power, skirmish, beast.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Mm, I think this is kind of like Inca, but a little bit worse because you have to fight, so you don't get any amber.
yeah.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me. Uh, I cannot recall a single game where I got much mileage out of this card.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like, when I see this card, I just think, that took up a slot. Great. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, in my very first Mass Mutation deck, I got a Legacy Roxor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's, I
That's
mean, that was the exciting, but also
yeah.
it was would have preferred another card.
Right. Right. Where oh, where's my legacy nature's call?
Oh yeah, or
Hmm.
Legacy Mimicry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't do that to me. Yep. Yeah, I agree. This is just it's not great. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't think of a situation where I wouldn't rather have had like a Muslik Murmook.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and I don't get why it needs to deal 2 damage when fighting, because this could be like a souped up Snufflegator. That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, but no,
But as a
no, it doesn't get
yeah,
to be that.
yeah.
Ugh.
Like I compare this to Inca, it's like I'll
Yeah,
just want Inca.
yeah, yeah.
Go
It's
rare.
rough. Okay, cool. Well, the next card is much nicer.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, and that's Taliga, who is a 3 power human witch who I think's been in every set up through Worlds Collide, and then of course didn't make it into Mass Mutation. But um, Taliga is a 3 power human witch that says each time your opponent plays a creature, gain an amber, and yeah, that's super good.
Yeah, big fan of this card. Hard to complain about it. Uh, it could be used against you in a skilled way, like someone setting you up for uh, too much protect,
Hmm.
something like that. But in general, this card, particularly when you get it out early, causes huge problems for your opponent. And
Hmm.
if you got a Ghost Form on this, it'd just be wild. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
this is extremely good card. I'm I'm usually quite pleased to see this. I'm always quite pleased to see this
Yep.
in my deck. When I see it in my opponent's list, I really worry about it and
Yep.
need to figure out like what removals I want to have in place. Because if you, especially with Saurian, if you like ward and taunt this, and you're having a lot of problems getting rid of it, particularly when you do have more creatures in this set, and you have to play them, and then they're advancing their amber, and then later you can fight, and you have to go through all this effort to
Hmm.
deal with it. Can be pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Okay. So first of all, I'll just say like I think the artwork on this card is some of the better. It's really good. And then the flavor text is so good. You know, don't try to change the crucible to suit your needs. Let it change you. That's a very like um, feeding into this sort of I guess you might say like judo style, like using
Hmm.
your opponent's momentum against them. And then this is so much more balanced than Hunting Witch. And I think in Coda, Hunting Witch is probably better than Taliga because Hunting Witch you can do these crazy degenerate combos with. Whereas Taliga is a problem that you're putting on the board and your opponent has an opportunity to do something about it. But you're probably going to get a benefit out of it. And I think from that standpoint, like Taliga is just so good. It's really good for you, but it's not degenerate in the way that Hunting Witch was. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know. It's really a great card.
Yeah, I think it's very well designed. I really like it as a rare,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interactive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like hunting witches, the fact that you can get all the amber right from hand made it certainly powerful in a competitive setting. It's also like kind of annoying to deal with. It's like, okay, they just dropped all these hunting witches and now they're on key, and it was like, what am I supposed to do about that?
Right.
I feel Taliga is promotes it's more fun, I think,
Mm-hmm.
than hunting witch.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. Cool. Next up is Vine Apple Tree, which I have more mixed feelings about. But this is a an artifact with a bonus amber that says that keys cost +1 amber for each growth counter on Vine Apple Tree. Growth counter being a random counter that isn't on any
Yeah.
other card,
Hmm.
which is fine. Like Keyforge does a few of those. And it says after a player forges a key, remove each growth counter from Vine Apple Tree, and its action ability is you put a counter on it. So, um, it's an amber. It gives you an amber. Have you had games where like it amounts to much more than that?
Yeah, uh, especially if you have Mostic Mermooks, like it
Mm-hmm.
helps you kind of like universal key lock. Like you would
Mm-hmm.
want to play it in situations where you think they're gonna forge
Sure.
next.
Sure.
Um, and so if you're kind of at pace with each other, it's awkward to use this. But if you're ahead, so you have the key and they don't, and you're jacking up the costs, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're behind, and so you're slowing them down by making them pay more, and you won't necessarily be affected by that as much.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little slow,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't like, and you have to keep going into Untamed to use it more and more.
Right.
Uh, I think any kind of stop in Untamed is pretty good. I think Ritual Balance is a better artifact than this,
Yeah. Yep.
uh, but I do think this isn't much worse, and it does get you an amber right away. Versus Ritual Balance, you have to wait a turn.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Um. Yeah. I think like. Hmm, this one is fine, but yeah, I struggle to use it really effectively. Whereas I think Universal Key Lock, there's a lot more clarity around like, okay, I'm either dropping this turn because my opponent's on 9, or I think they're gonna get to 9 before I get to 9, or
Hmm.
I'm not, right? But yeah, if you can consistently use this, like your opponent goes to 7, you use this, they pay 7 instead of 6, like that's, maybe up to 3 amber over the course of the game. That's fine.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you have a strong Untamed board, like you could get this up to some pretty big numbers, especially with Mustic Mooks. Like perhaps
Mm-hmm.
they're paying 9 or 10, uh, and losing 3 to 4 amber is pretty impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. That's fair.
But yeah, it is a slow card,
Mm-hmm.
and if you without the Mustic Mooks, like okay, delay to go to 1. If this is the only amber control you have an Untamed, it is problematic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we've got Witch of the Wilds, 4 power, Beast Witch. During each turn in which Untamed is not your active house, you may play one Untamed card. This card tends to die a lot, uh, which I think indicates how powerful people think it is. Like playing
Yeah.
cards out of house, playing a card in this game is very good. Like the
Yeah.
cards just do a lot of stuff uh, in general, and especially with the board state fluctuating a lot. So being able to play one more card, which another aspect of why playing cards is important, because every time you play a card, you're also drawing cards.
Right.
So you can get this untamed stuff out of your hand that maybe you don't necessarily want to use um, later, right? Like it can do something for you now, and you draw a card that you might care about
Mm-hmm.
a bit more. One time in the sealed Chainbound, I had a deck that had CXO Tabor and Witch of the Wilds and Golden Spiral, I think, or Legatus
Mm.
Raptor. But you could go between like all three houses. Looks pretty
Mm-hmm.
great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Val Jericho, you could play three. Uh, no, no, you can't because Witch Wild's still untamed. So uh, that doesn't work.
Well, you could, yeah, two. You could definitely play two.
You could do two, yeah, but you could do that before.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to play three cards in the first turn.
Oh, no. If you go Star Alliance and you play Val, and then your Val play is Witch of the Wilds, yes, you can play another Untamed card.
Oh, because it does say you may play one, but does
So
Witch of the
they so
Wild
they've
count?
they've they've clarified this,
Mm-hmm.
that these effects are cumulative. So like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
if you play a phase shift and then a wild wormhole, and the wild wormhole plays a non-logos card, that doesn't count against your phase shift, right? So
I see.
basically the way you count these is like towards playing the most cards. Yeah.
So I wonder how Witch of the Wilds interacts with Ember Imp. Does it say like you cannot play
Uh
more than two cards?
yeah, I think so. Ember Imp is a yeah, and of course cannot wins, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
That's pretty ironclad. Well, except in the cases where it's not, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate all the clarity
Mhm.
that they're bringing to the rules.
Mhm.
All right. Next up, Xenos Blood Shadow and Toad, I guess, go together.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So Xenos Blood Shadow, 4-power human witch with elusive, hazardous 6, poison, and skirmish. Very strong feature.
Yeah.
And then Toad, 1-power beast, Toad cannot reap. And these cards always come together
Yep.
in the deck. So linked rarity. Okay. Xenos Blood Shadow.
So,
Uh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that the problem I always have here is like, this seems like it should be so cool,
Mm-hmm.
but then in practice, it's not. Um, because it's just a creature that is gonna be there, right? And it can kill something easily, but I think if you can throw upgrades on it, if you can Voltron it, suddenly you have something amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that. So that's probably the biggest thing I think is missing is like the thing that makes the skirmish and poison like really good, or that makes the hazardous really good.
Yes, I think it's just hard to get it to do much.
Yeah,
Like you have to be an untamed, and then presumably you would fight and uh, destroy one creature.
yeah,
A lot of the value of creatures in this game is reaping. Um, so it's a delayed destroy one creature per turn, which skirmish actually accomplishes pretty decently on its own. The
Hmm.
poison doesn't even add that much. I think if this card had taunt on it, it would be super interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be really good. Or even fight gain one.
Mm-hmm.
Like that'd be really good. It's the yeah. So if you compare it to Mesa's Asp, this is better. But if you compare
Yeah.
it to like Moon Cursor, I think Moon Cursor might be better.
Yeah, because it could steal.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the problem with it.
And Asp doesn't come with the toad. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
toad, I don't know. I think Nature's Call should get toad.
that
Like that
would,
card is
that
so
would make
powerful.
sense. That would definitely make
Xeno's
sense.
Blood Shadow. I
It's
I think
thematically
even by
perfect.
itself it wouldn't be that great. Yeah, the
Right.
theme is really good.
Yeah.
Uh, but the card itself, okay, it has all these keywords. It's just
Right.
not doing much.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I like how the toad on the Xenos Blood Shadow card looks so much more intimidating than the actual toad. Like poor Prince Derek, he really didn't fare well.
Yeah.
his his mission was not going well. Mm.
Uh, Prince Derek. I really like that card by the way.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great card. It's a
Yeah.
great card, and I
It,
love the like, and they've done such a good job with this in Mass Mutation too. But I really appreciate the like you don't. It's not like you learn that much about these characters, right? Like we don't know
mm-hmm.
that much about Prince Derek, but if you look at the card Prince Derek and you look at the flavor text, like you understand why Prince Derek would be trying to, I don't know, woo Xenos.
Yeah.
Um, and then poor Xenos just isn't interested, and and the poor grisly fate of Prince Derek. I mean, hard to really blame either of them. Um, but not a great outcome for Derek.
Yeah.
And then I love how that kind of carries forward in Mass Mutation, where it's like, yeah, there is a story, and these characters are having weird stuff happen to them.
Yeah, it's pretty cute how they put it in, and it's a nice touch. And
Hmm.
looking forward to see where these stories go. I haven't checked out the RPG book,
Hmm.
so I don't know if it's good or not. But I
Yeah,
would love
I
to read
I
more about
have
them.
it. I need to spend some more time on it, but I will at least say that um, it elucidates it elucidates Red Baron a little more, so that's cool.
Oh,
Um, and like there are a couple of clues to future houses that are likely to show up in the game of Keyforge, so that's fun.
very cool. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the world of the Crucible could grow into something even bigger. Like it's just fascinating idea.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I think like compared to, oh, man. Okay, so I love lore, and then but I've never really been into RPGs, but I should be. But I love lore, and comparing Crucible, I don't know, to like Tolkien's Legendarium, right? Like the Crucible is not a holistic, um, well fit together lore. Um, but it's not trying to be. It's trying to be like really wild and crazy. Um, so I think I have to like to appreciate the idea of a Keyforge RPG. I just have to like embrace Well, like Taliga says, don't try to change the Crucible to suit your needs. You just have to really embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually never played like a. I mean, I played like RPG video games,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think this kind of RPG is like Dungeons and Dragons, which is something I've ever done,
Right.
but I hear is pretty fun and creative. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think a world where things are pretty wild, like there could be a lot of opportunity to uh, not feel too constrained, I guess, by like the rules of the world.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yes. There's not a lot that you could plop into a story in the Crucible and have somebody complain. That doesn't belong
Yeah,
here.
this doesn't make
No, no.
sense.
Literally everything belongs here. Deal with it. I'm just waiting till they like drop some Marvel IP or something like that into Keyforge. That'll be a weird day.
Yeah, they did Marvel and Star Wars, right, at
Yeah,
FFG. So I mean, they could make like a House Jedi or something.
they totally
I'm gonna
could.
get a lot of people's attention.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know, like I don't know that they would consider doing that, but the reasons that they couldn't are entirely lawyerly, right? And not because of the way the Crucible works.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, anyway, all
Yeah.
right. Cool. Anything you want to tack on the end here?
No, I think it's an interesting walkthrough. I mean, I know Mass Mutation's already out. Uh, I do think there's some things to say about Worlds Collide Untamed, that help understand the evolution of this house, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think bursting Amber on the board was maybe where they were going. Um, uh, it didn't come together in certain ways, and other ways, I think it came together really well. And I think there's certain untamed lists in this set that are good. Um,
Yep.
I think this house, I've seen some pretty top decks that have Untamed in it in Worlds
Mm-hmm.
Collide. Um, Brobnar has been more of a. I don't know if you did the Brobnar work. Did you already do that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Brobnar walkthrough? Yeah, I think that having when you just see Brobnar in a Worlds Collide deck, it's such a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
because I actually really like Brobnar House. The,
Right.
some of the cards are just so bad, and there aren't enough like you know really swingy cards in Brobnar.
Yeah.
Untamed has that.
Yeah. I think. Well, okay. Yeah. This stuff
Worlds
I
Collide Brobnar
said.
specifically.
Yeah, yeah. This stuff I said in the Worlds Collide Brobner walkthrough, but like, barn raising is such a great example to me because, like, okay, compare barn raising with Warsong, which is a very clear comparison to make
Yep.
because they're equivalent, but Warsong has no upper bound, and barn raising does, and and that I think to me is the problem with Worlds Collide Brobnar compared to Coda. Like even in Coda, I know a lot of people hated Brobnar. I loved them, but in Worlds Collide, you take away Relentless Assault, which is one of their best cards,
Yep.
and then you say like, and by the way, all the cards that before would have been Amber Burst are now like that would have taken your creature advantage and turned it into Amber Burst are now cards that are Amber Burn. And so if your opponent has no Amber, they're totally dead cards. And if you have no board, they're totally dead cards. Yeah,
Hmm.
and like it's it's really sad. And I have a couple of really good Worlds Collide Brobnar decks, but what makes them good involves a lot of Coda Brobnar cards.
Yeah, and I that's disappointing.
Yeah.
I think they just need some explosive cards.
Yeah.
They just make some explosive plays,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just missing. I mean, I can't think of any except Ragnarok or
That's a
like
terrible card.
Anger Chieftain.
Don't talk to me about Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a bad. It's I don't know. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't get it. Untamed, I think you can have a good list
Mm-hmm.
in Untamed. The commons are some of them are weaker. I think some of them are pretty good. I
Yeah.
think it's better than the Untamed in Age of Ascension. I don't.
Hmm.
I think that the only things that were good about that were the cards that were reprinted.
And
Uh,
Duskwitch.
Dustwitch, Amberspine Mongrel.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited about to have Amberspine Mongrel back. Um, that's a fun
Hmm.
card. That's in the category of I think like really fun cards where they same as Taliga, right? Where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to stop you from doing anything. You do what you want. I'll just be over here getting Amber.
Hmm.
But
And I'm sure there are other good cards in Untamed and AOA that aren't
mhm.
immediately coming to mind. But I I think in Worlds Collide Untamed, it's kind of like Shadows to me. Like you can have a pretty terrible Shadows list of Worlds Collide. You
Yes.
can also have some really functional ones,
Yeah,
and I feel
absolutely.
Untamed is similar.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a really good assessment. The high end is pretty high, and the low end can be pretty low.
Yeah, whereas like Logos and Saurian, you won't really see like just horrible
Right.
lists. I mean, I've seen some lists in this and Worlds Collide that's like, what's going on? It's seen pretty bad. Um, but maybe not as bad as
Harbinger.
Shadows and Untamed could be good.
Poor Harbinger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, okay, so I think that wraps up Worlds Collide Untamed. And yeah, that is my last Worlds Collide walkthrough, so that seals that up. That's really fun. Um, thank you so much, Julian, for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to get you back on to do one of the mass mutation houses that I still have left. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah. Let's try to get that to happen. Sounds like fun. Thanks
Cool.
for having me on, Andrew.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, and yeah, have a good night.
You too.